Call the meeting to order, the Board of Finance on Tuesday, March 25th at 6 p.m. I'd like to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, if we could. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, minutes. Did everyone, I assume everyone got the package, the March 12th minutes? Did everyone have a chance to read the minutes?
Yes.
Any corrections, changes?
Yes, we're doing the 18th of March.
No, 12th.
Paragraph 3.
Which page?
Page 1, number 3.
Number 3.
We're on which one?
We're on March 12th.
Board of Education?
Yep.
Okay.
The last sentence before the bullets, it should read several slides with the board, including.
So instead of included, including?
Yep.
I have a correction on something before that. On the second paragraph,
Yep.
the second sentence, and I'll just give this to you, Leslie.
You got it. Whoops.
This is Co.
Mrs. Coe, you're going to turn that off, aren't you?
He asked to
I
leave the
usually
room.
do, but I forgot. You know, I'm not as young as I used to be. I forget things.
Linda, what were your?
The second sentence isn't really an accurate depiction of what was said, because what says here, she noted that the town has stopped funding the pension plan. That's not correct. It should read, she noted that the town stopped deducting employee contributions to the pension plan for officers who have either reached the age of 53 or completed 25 years of service, whichever comes first. So I'll just give that to Leslie.
You have that last one, you got what you said? Okay.
Go ahead, I have the same one.
Okay, on the second page, the last word of the second line, included, needs a D.
That's the first up there in the top right, included.
That's beginning with Mr. Curtis?
Yep.
Yep.
Just needs a D at the end of the word, included. And I'll give you all of these. The second bullet, student population and projections, should be plural. The 6th bullet, musical instrument fees, I would say plural, compared to the athletic sports, the fees for athletic sports pay for play. I'll give you all this, Leslie, so you don't have to go crazy.
I think we have to read it in though, otherwise we're gonna get
Right.
reprimanded by the town clerk.
Yeah. 8-period day, which is the last bullet, needs a hyphen. You got any before that? Let's
Nope.
see. Down in the number 4, second bullet point, just missing a comma.
I have one in the first bullet point.
Okay.
Instead,
Estimated year-end transfers, fiscal year memo, comma, which. It's always a comma before a which.
first one, it should be, instead of this explained, this showed.
Where are you?
Paragraph 1, the paragraph right before that.
Okay.
First bullet, second sentence, the word this, instead of explained, should be this showed.
Got anything there? Okay, I'm just wordsmithing, so number 4, after the 2 bullet points, that first little paragraph, Mr. Askham noted that Simsbury Farms is in a deficit. I would add the word position. And the town has to add the word either, make it whole, blah, blah, blah. And then in the very last paragraph, Mr. Kimball and board members discussed the, I think we want to call it a school resource police officer, because otherwise it's not clear what a resource officer is. Does that, everyone agree with that?
Sure.
Yep,
School
that's good. Yep.
resource police
Makes sense.
officer. And that's it for me.
Any others?
Nope.
I
What?
move that we approve the minutes as amended for March 12th.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
Aye.
Okay.
One abstention.
One abstention, more abstained. Okay, how about the minutes of March 18th?
I didn't see any. No, I didn't see any changes.
I only had one small change. I'm on page, I just had one small change. On page 2,
Yep.
the AA rating is from Moody, not with Moody.
I'm sorry, where are you?
On the second page, top line,
Top line.
the AA rating is from Moody's.
And in the same, really picky, but in the same, there's a comma between February and 2013 on that first line. Number 4, first line, comma before the word which. And in number 6, first line, Mr. Askham questioned, take out the word on, questioned whether or not. Second sentence in number 6, the board discussed options, take out the word on and put 4.
I think we talked about 98.5 in there. You know, we had said it had been at 98, we were talking about going to
We
98.5.
did discuss that. I wasn't
Right.
sure how much detail you wanted in here, so.
But the number on here just shows we were talking about a collection rate set at 98, but
Historically.
historically, and then we talked about changing that rate to 98.5. I believe that's what we were
Yeah,
talking
I
about.
think we should put that in there,
Right.
because
So
it's
the change of
more,
the collection rate,
I think it's in the second sentence. The board discussed options on changing the collection rate
298.
to 98.5.
Sounds good to me.
that's true,
That's basically what we talked about, I think.
comma, but no decision was made. I move that we amend the March 18th,
Second?
and it says amended.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? Minutes passed. Great. Well, that was good.
You might think somebody noting commas has a history of writing legislation where the commas really do matter.
Yes, they do.
Oh, that's right, I forgot.
We appreciate getting everything right, because, as I stated before, I'm a numbers person, not a...
I could tell you an anecdote about a comma that cost the state $20 million.
All right, next on our agenda is the Board of Selectmen budget presentation. I assume we have, someone's going to make the presentation to us? Sean? Yep, here she is. Just on time, thank you. Put it on the wrong way. Put it on the wrong way.
These are good.
We don't have that, right?
You should have a booklet. Did everyone have a booklet here?
Yep.
I think Nick gave them, everyone has a booklet here that you're going to be speaking from, and First Selectman,
Should have the first selectman's message is going to be on the inner side of the book. We don't really know now.
thank you for coming, Mary, to
thank you.
enlighten us on the budget, so we look forward to your presentation.
Thank you. Thanks for all your hard work and time in trying to help us work on a budget to present to the taxpayers of Simsbury. Before we get into the formal presentation, I just wanted to make sure everybody had their books, make sure everybody has the budget message. The budget books and the message is hot off the press. The Board of Selectmen meeting concluded around 9:30 last night, so we got you the information as quickly as possible. The Board of Selectmen is required, as you know, by charter to deliver a budget to the Board of Finance by March 31st. So we are a little ahead of time, and I know you're anxious to review both the town budget and Board of Ed budget in order to set a public hearing, but we do have some time, so I didn't want you to feel pressured if you do need more time to review. Certainly, we can accommodate extra meetings or extra discussions if you need it, because the charter does give us the flexibility to have that time. I just wanted to put a little in context about our budget discussions, and I want to thank the Board of Selectmen for all of their hard work. We held budget workshops. They received the first Selectmen budget on February 27th. We held budget workshops on Thursday, February 27th, Friday, February 28th, Saturday, March 1st, Friday, March 7th, Monday, March 10th, concluding with a special meeting yesterday with adoption of a budget. Just to give you a little background in what the Board of Selectmen considered, first of all, we took a look at our goal of not increasing the mill rate. And we appreciate the discussions that the Board of Finance had, and we feel strongly that not raising taxes is a priority. We took a look at what the economic development situation was in town, and we have some good news to report. As you know, the grand list has grown for the first time in 4 years. So our efforts and the marketing of the town and the new regulations and the new form-based code has resulted in development. So it's doing exactly what we had hoped. And as a result of that, there is grand list growth of about 0.599%. That will bring about $500,000 a year in new tax revenue. And this also doesn't include all of the new projects that are coming online. So we're really thrilled that those efforts have paid off. Secondly, we have a great relationship with the Hartford, and while we can't stop them from selling their business and relocating, we have a firm commitment that they will continue to pay the taxes that they're paying through the next fiscal year, and that gives us some predictability and some stability as we work with them to find some new tenants and some new buyers. Third, we have had much success. If you recall, we have been working on the town side to consolidate carriers on the health care side. When we started this process about 6 years ago, the contracts with our unions on the town side and the contracts with the employees on the Board of Ed side had a number of different carriers, and the contracts did not allow us to change carriers. We were legally bound to offer the contracts that we offered. So over the last 6 years, we've been working with our staff, and I want to give credit to Tom Cook and Sean Kimball for working really hard with our employees, and certainly I want to thank our employees both on the town side and the Board of Ed side. Through the contract negotiations, we were able to agree to consolidate carriers. This year, for the first time, that consolidation of carriers will save more than $500,000 for the town. The bulk of the savings will appear on the Board of Ed side, as you'll see, but we had about $100,000 in savings on the town side as well. So while you hear of insurance costs going up, through the direct contributions and negotiations and foresight of our town, we are actually saving money in that category. We looked at the town mill rate, and that we took into account the discussions that the Board of Finance had to hold taxes or to reduce taxes in some cases. I know some members indicated they would like to see our tax rate go down. We started with the department head requests coming into my office. The requests, when you tabulated all of the increases that were requested, would have been an additional $716,000 in spending, which is a 3.9% increase over last year. That 3.9% budget that came into my office included salary increases, pension, workers' comp, property insurance, and would have been a 3.808% increase over last year's budget just for the contractual obligations, and then the additional department heads made up the difference. In order to present a budget to the Board of Selectmen, I met with our staff and we reviewed the budget requests, and I cut $428,913 from the department head request, which resulted in a 1.5% budget over the previous fiscal year. The budget that I presented to the Board of Selectmen was $18,634,752. The budget as presented to the Board of Selectmen did include some difficult choices. It did include some reductions. It did include some staff reductions. It did include some service reductions. It did also include some increases. It included pension increases, $60,000 more in salt supplies for roads, increased trail maintenance, additional technology staff and technology initiatives, thanks to our technology task force, many who are here tonight, so thank you. And it included additional frontline library services. At the same time, it did reduce library administrative support, and it did recommend not filling a vacancy in the police department. When the Board of Selectmen conducted their budget hearings and budget review, they voted last night to adopt a budget of $18,751,363. And they added $116,611 to my recommended budget, which is a 2.2% increase over fiscal year 2013-14. I'll go through the changes that they made, but I wanted to give you the history of the budget and the context by which everyone spent a lot of time and a lot of effort and made some difficult choices, and that's the history of how we got to the budget discussion we'll have tonight. Any questions at this point? Yeah.
A couple. So the 116,611 that was added, what percentage does that
That will bring the Board of Selectmen budget up to 2.20%,
compare to what yours was, which was what?
1.5. So just to go through the adopted budget, the budget goals we took into account as budget goals that we just reviewed, the drivers of the budget history. We took a look at where our tax dollars go and how they're spent. We looked at our cost-saving efforts, and we went through our budget checklist to make sure that we've addressed all of the needs of the community. Our goals as we started the budget process was first to provide for the public health and safety of our residents. We next looked at providing quality services at an affordable cost. We also looked at what's important to maintain our status as one of the best towns in Connecticut. We, as you know, we're proud of our ranking as #1 in Hartford Magazine's list of top towns, and we're proud of our ranking as number 39 in Best Places to Live by Money Magazine. And I know while these are great statistics and great acknowledgments, we find they have a tremendous economic development value, and the Hartford Insurance Group is actually using these awards and accomplishments in their marketing materials. So they have indicated publicly that it's been a very big help in marketing the town. We took a look at the pressures on the town budget. I know you're familiar, these are both on the town and the Board of Ed side. These include the health insurance. While we did have cost savings, our health insurance costs actually are going up. Our pensions, even though the town has always funded our ARC at 100%, the reduction in investments, our loss in investments, has obviously required us to increase our pension obligations. Our contract settlements, our utilities and materials, our OPEB funding, and our obligations to the Farmington Valley Health District are all pressures that increase our town costs. We're also obligated to look on the revenue side. Obviously, you can't look at just the expenditure side. We have an obligation to look at the revenues coming into the town. We're mindful that while the Hartford is assuring us of a one-year stability, we do have that uncertainty of a new buyer looming. Our state aid also fluctuates on year to year. This year, we're monitoring it very closely, and we're lobbying up at the Capitol, but our state aid actually is increasing a little bit this year, so that's good news compared to previous years when we suffered drastic reductions in both town aid and education cost sharing formulas. We're mindful of our mill rate as it compares to other communities, and we are pleased that we are experiencing through our economic development efforts some modest grand list growth. To put the budget of the town in perspective, you can see the town has really done a tremendous job of controlling costs. If you look at the line items over the last 6 years, we're still way below our previous year's increases. So I think that slide really shows you what a tremendous sacrifice I think our initiatives that our town staff and department heads have been able to accomplish with actually less money. As we all know, the town budget is really gets a lot of attention, and we're proud of that, but it's actually only 1/4 of the overall budget. So when you're looking at the town-wide budget, it's important to keep how the town budget compares with the overall budget that you set the mill rate for. The red, as you can see, the red column perspective is the Board of Ed. The green portion is the Board of Selectmen budget. The yellow portion is non-public schools, and the blue portion is debt. So you can see how the town budget compares to the overall budget, and you can see we're just really a small piece. If you look at the mill rate distribution, I think this is probably surprising to many people and many of our taxpayers. If you were to ask the average taxpayer how much of the mill rate is allocated to the town of a total of 38.51 mills, the Board of Selectmen budget counts for 7.60 of the mill. So I don't think anyone would in town would guess that that was how much our town services cost. You can see the Board of Ed is 26.87 of the mills. And I don't think that's surprising because 3/4 of our town budget is spent on our schools and our education portion. This slide really is just to, because we had a revaluation, to really take a look at what the median net taxable assessments are to make sure we aren't overly burdening our taxpayers. We compared the 2007-2011 grand lists for a median taxable assessment of $231,000. That's based on a home value of $330,000 using the mill rate at the time. The median tax bill in Simsbury was about $77,484. When we looked at the grand list for 2012 to 2000, well, we don't have 2016 yet, but the 2012 through the next period. If you looked at the same median tax assessment of a house of about $194,000, based on an average home value of $277,000, using the current mill rate, the median tax bill is about $7,471. Again, we broke down where taxes go. So if you were to pay that median tax bill, how much of that where would that $7,471 that you paid in taxes a year, where would it go? For all the town services, you would spend $1,473 of your tax bill on the town services. You'd pay $5,213 for the education costs. I think this slide is important because it shows you really to the average taxpayer where their money is being spent, which is important for us to keep in mind as we adopt budgets. We broke down that amount even further and tried to factor in the average cost monthly from our taxpayers. If with a median tax bill of $623, the town receives about $123 a month. So you can see it's a very small portion of the monthly bill. We also took a look at how we're doing in terms of tax bills over the last 9 years. Oftentimes you hear people say, I'm spending more, and what am I getting? And we actually looked at the town side budget. If you look, we're actually spending at the same level a median tax bill, a monthly median tax bill, as we have over the last, since 2009. So that gives you a sense of how we really have not increased the town budget. Again, the $123 a month that we receive per taxpayer, we use it for a number of things. Our first priority, as I said, was public health and safety. We have 35 sworn police. We use it for road maintenance. We have 164 miles of town roadway. We use it for snow removal and highways, highway repair. We pay for library services. And Simsbury ranks very high in terms of numbers of borrowers and patrons. We use it for town hall services, processing land use applications, building permits, inspections, registering voters, marrying people. We use it for engineering and capital project services. We have 9 capital projects currently valued at $8.2 million. I think where our staff has really done a great job and really shines is in the amount of grants that we're able to receive and process. And we have grants of about $3.8 million. So far, we've had a pretty good winter, other than cold and a lot of snow, but we've gotten really good at emergency response, having had 5 major natural disasters over the last 2 years. We've done a really great job of registering more than 5,000 people on our emergency alerts and responses. We try through social media, through Twitter, and through press releases to keep our residents informed when we have emergency disasters. We also fund parks, pools, and recreational services. We have 2,300 acres of open space, 440 acres of town-owned parks, 30 playing fields, 2 aquatic fields, 30,000 users of Simsbury pools, and 39,500 rounds of golf. And I didn't play one of those last year. In our social service department, we have tremendous users of our dial ride, which is great. You may have seen the Hartford Current page 1 article on Sunday that mentioned how Simsbury is among many of the communities that have seen a dramatic increase in the need for food assistance. And I think our staff does a good job of trying to keep folks feeling confidential and feeling comfortable that we're here to help. And so we've done a great job of doing that. So we thought we'd give you the breakdown by department of the monthly expenditures that the Board of Selectmen budget pays for. From this graph, you can see very clearly that our two most expensive departments are certainly our public safety departments and our public works department. If you look at the 10-year budget comparison, if you look at fiscal year 2004 to 2009, the net difference in those budgets have been 28.18%. If you look at the difference between the 2009 budget and the 2014, the difference is 0.08%. So I think those numbers are pretty self-explanatory. In order to keep budgets low and to reduce budgets, obviously we are very aggressive in finding grants. We've received 40 grants in recent years. We've converted a lot of our paid positions to volunteer positions. In addition to the consolidation of the healthcare plans, we also switched our retiree health plan. That saved us $240,000 last year alone. We're moving to an online tax payment option and hope to go paperless if we can get folks online. And we also have become aggressive in the energy savings field and trying to become more efficient. Our budget planning checklist that goes into presenting the budget that we're presenting here tonight includes contractual wage increases, benefits, department head requests, since they're the professionals that recommend what the town needs, our town technology needs, which we focused on for the first time in an initiative last year, our grand list changes, our state aid projections, our revenue estimates, our tax appeal settlements, our collection rate, our debt level, our capital improvement plan, and our capital non-recurring needs, just to name a few. So here's where we are tonight to begin our discussions. The department requests totaled budget request of $19,063,665, which is a 3.9% increase. I reduced that budget to a 1.57% increase. The Board of Selectmen added back $116,611, which is a 2.20% increase. The Board of Finance has had earlier discussions to adjust the base, given the returning to the general fund of previous contractual funds that we did budget for, and reappropriating those funds. And if you take into the new base, that increase would be 1.07%. What does the add backs include? They include contractual salary requirements. They include fully funding all 36 sworn officers, including 2 SROs. It includes critical technology staff for technology upgrades, a new teen librarian position, economic development support, additional $60,000 in salt supplies, additional $10,000 for trail maintenance. It maintains the townwide leaf collection that the Board of Selectmen considered discontinuing. It includes additional communications and website support so that we can begin to increase our presence on the web and in social media. And it adds custodial public works support staff.
So Mary, the Board of Selectmen is funding 2 of the officers for the schools?
Yes, the first SRO is funded with a $40,000 contribution from the Board of Ed. And the second SRO is currently in the budget funded 100% by the town. We've asked the Board of Ed to consider also funding that second SRO at $40,000. And my understanding is that they're meeting tonight to consider that request. But as it stands in the budget that's presented to you, the one SRO is funded 100% by the town, even though 9 months of the year their time is spent in the school.
And the split is 50-50 approximately, though.
No, but it's the $40,000 takes into account some of the, well, I think it's like
half of the salary.
of the salary. It doesn't take into account the benefits. But it's, you know, it's certainly a significant contribution, and it's what the Board of Selectmen asked for, and it's what the Board of added.
If they come down tonight and say they approve that, what will we do with your budget? What would you recommend we do with your budget?
Cut it.
The 40,000? Okay.
So you get back down to about the 1.9.
I mean, the Board of Selectmen didn't vote on that. I couldn't speak for the Board of Selectmen, but,
But that would bring you back down to a little under 2%.
correct.
So
To be under 1% with the adjusted base.
Correct.
Can I just ask why, what was the justification for needing an additional officer? I know they
There's one
added
SRO at
after
the high school,
Yeah.
and so there was
Was
a,
that new after Newtown, or that
Yes.
was always
Second
there?
one, yeah.
second one was assigned to the high
The
school,
high school was before, the second one was at.
Henry James.
But what was the justification for
It was
needing?
through safety audit, the security audit, and also as a result of Newtown.
But I guess my question is, why was the initial reaction to Newtown that we needed one officer, and then over time we thought we
No,
needed two?
No.
We've had a school safety officer for many years. I can't remember how many years.
Okay.
Last year was the first time it was funded with a contribution from the Board of Ed, for the first.
Okay.
Previously, the town funded the one SRO 100%.
After Newtown, there was a Board of Ed did the security audit.
Right.
And that's when
And that's when
the second
the second was added.
And so the conclusion was that they only needed
One
an
additional.
officer in in
They needed,
Henry James, not in the other 5 grammar schools?
I think they
Correct.
rotate.
And should we expect that the next 5 grammar schools will come along?
I can't answer that.
No, they rotate.
Yeah, I can't answer
I'm
that. I
just
don't know.
wondering how that, I don't know.
I think
the
that
background.
may be something to ask when you meet again with the Board of Ed, because
It was our understanding when they explained it to us that they were going to rotate around, yes. That's the way they explained it to us.
Because I was reading at Henry James, and I thought, why did they get picked and
No.
the other schools left out? So,
But the 2 SROs was what the Board of Ed recommended, and that's what the town funded.
okay.
We did, per request of the Board of Finance, I did inform the Board of Selectmen that the Board of Finance would like to see further reductions in the Board of Selectmen budget. That did not go over very well, and we had a very lively discussion. And so I wanted, just in full disclosure, say this was not enthusiastically endorsed by the Board of Selectmen. Nevertheless, we did send this to you based on a 5-1 vote, so you have it here before you. What the reductions would, necessary to bring us to a 0.56%, we needed to cut an additional $95,245. Because our budget is not very large, that does have a big impact on our budget. We put the list that you see here together. We added further reductions would require elimination of a clerk for the Board of Assessment Appeals. It would reduce nearly all of the increase that we put back into salt and drainage supplies. We would eliminate the townwide leaf collection. We would eliminate additional speed signs that we added to the CNR budget. We would eliminate the part-time records clerk. We would eliminate the additional support for custodial support that we previously added. We would reduce the communication specialist position, additional costs, and we would reduce the EDC marketing plan.
Is this the order that you would do it in?
I would not represent that this is the order we would do it in. We didn't have that discussion.
I know the Board of Ed did theirs in the order they would
Yeah.
do it in. So this is
This is
just
not, I think.
the total? Just the
Yeah,
total?
if the Board of Finance were to be inclined to reduce the Board of Selectmen further, I would suggest that you would give us a number, and I would take it back to the Board of Selectmen. I think there would need to be further discussion as to whether this list would look the same or different based on an actual amount.
Just about the leaf collection, I never knew, I've lived here 20 years, I never knew we had leaf collection.
Well, there
Is
you
it
go.
just
So you wouldn't have
in-
missed it.
Is it like the sewer system where it's only downtown?
No, so we have a townwide leaf collection that folks can bag their leaves and put them in bags on the side of the road.
Bag
And
the leaves.
it's not used townwide. It's used maybe by third of the town. Because a lot of folks just rake their leaves into their backyard because we are a rural community. So when we looked at, difficult choices to cut, and we looked at what is not used townwide, what doesn't benefit
Well,
the
that's why
town
that struck me
townwide,
as
and so
well.
that's why that item made the list.
Yeah.
Is it primarily used by people who probably don't have places to, we have some,
I don't know. To be honest, it's used sporadically, like, there's not like a neighborhood where more use it than others. It's
Is it available for everyone to use?
available for everyone to use.
Right, so it's not restricted.
Right.
It's not restricted, it's just one of those
People
things
choose not
that,
to use it.
I think there were more folks that have used it and less folks using it over time, so it was one of those items that, we thought there were other things in the budget that were more important.
Linda, on the sewer is restricted unless you
Yeah,
have a
the
line in
line-
front of your house.
Yep.
So I think 40-some-odd% of the town, and that's why there's a separate user fee.
Yep.
So sewer users pay.
So,
I did have one question on the salary increases, pension, workers' comp, and property insurance increases amounted to 3.08%. So if you're coming in at an increase of slightly over 1.07%, then you had to reduce essentially other areas to accommodate those increases
correct.
on prior year.
Correct. But if you recall, the insurance savings provided a lot of the ability for us to not have an increase. Had we not had the foresight to have negotiated changes in the health insurance, we would have been coming in with a 3% increase.
Are you getting some benefits from people contributing to like their OPEB? I think, is that starting to kick in?
Actually, interesting story. So we were at a conference and we were talking with other municipalities, and they were talking about how their employees contribute to OPEB. And when the OPEB, other post-employment benefit line item was added, or benefit was added to the town, there was no requirement for contribution to town staff. So in our last contracts, we negotiated for the first time an OPEB contribution. And that has saved the town this year alone $30,000. Over the next 3 years, it'll be saving us over $100,000. So that, was a tremendous foresight on our staff, and, just talking with our other municipal leaders, and, our employees recognize that it's to their benefit that we're funding their retirement health plan, and so they, thanks to them, they were willing to contribute to their own health care plan. So we'll have significant savings on the town side as a result of that.
And also on a side note, when you look back historically at the Board of Selectmen budget, when we told the Board of Ed and the Board of Selectmen to put it in. On the Board of Selectmen budget, those 2 years that jumped up, most of that was OPEB over and above, because it kind of took 2 years to settle out. So it basically, large numbers hit everyone's budget for 2 years. So
Yeah,
there's a
and
more dramatic impact on the Board of Selectmen's budget.
not all labor contracts have an OPEB contribution on the town side. We do for our town employees, not our police, and not for, I don't think the Board of Ed has a contribution.
Can I ask a question that I'm not quite sure how this list that you gave us, obviously, these things are being proposed as
Right.
you don't like,
Right.
but these were add-ins after your budget. So
Correct.
what is the police, I thought you said you had cut a position in the police
No.
department, but I see, so is it just that the Board of Selectmen restored it?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I was going to go back to the cuts. The, the additions to the, we didn't have this on slide. Okay. I thought we had.
Well, you started with a budget for this year that's a little over $4 million for the police department. They requested $189,000 of increases. Basically, you've just pulled that back out. Is that not correct? Your recommended budget is about the same. It's just a few dollars more than the current budget.
Correct.
What are you looking at?
You're looking at tab
I'm
4?
looking at the,
There's a summary there.
this is the summaries, this is the stuff that what you sent out over the weekend is the same that's in the booklet, right?
Yeah. Well,
It's not.
What you got before, because they hadn't voted until last night, what you got on Friday was her original budget, the first second.
It was sent out?
if you,
What you have now is the top of it.
Correct. So if you looked at the budget that was online in February, and you looked at the list that you received tonight, that would be the complete budget.
So it's about 30,000 higher, I think, right?
I did want to just, before we open up for discussion, I did want to respond to some of the paving information that Barbara Pettigene had asked earlier. And I know some of this probably is a review because I know Tom Roy made a presentation to the Board of Finance in July and went through the roads. So did everyone get a copy of the memo? Okay. I wanted to just review what the budget as proposed, how it addresses paving and road maintenance. If I could just walk you through that portion.
Thank you.
In the current Board of Selectmen budget for road improvement funding, there's 3 places you will find funding for roads. The first is in the general operating budget. The board funded roads at a line item of $400,000. If you go to the tab, if you go to the Public Works tab, I don't know what tab number they have.
Can I have the code here?
Tab 5.
You'll see that, well, if you go
Five.
to the Public
Tab
Works
5.
tab, you'll see $400,000.
Tab 5?
5, tab 5.
The last page.
Last page.
Last page.
Okay, that's item number 1. You'll see that the board also funded roads in the capital recurring account. That's funded through the LoCIP funding that the town receives from the state. That's not funding that the taxpayers of Simsbury pay for, but we do need to appropriate it in order to authorize the Public Works Director to spend it. So it does show up in the capital non-recurring item. That's tab 13. So you'll see that line item is also in tab 13. That is a total of $155,184. When we get to capital, which the Board of Selectmen also approved last night, you'll see that the bonding request for fiscal year 15 and 16 is a total of $2.5 million, which is approximately $1.25 million a year. The Public Works Director in our discussions during our budget discussions, and also in his presentation to the Board of Finance in July, I think I have extra copies if folks need it, but the presentation that he made, he indicated that $1.2 million a year will maintain town roads to its current state, which is, in his opinion, less than optimal funding. In order to fund and reach a higher level of roads, because some of our roads hadn't been maintained at the level he would have liked to have seen over the years, he is asking the town to fund $1.8 million a year for 4 years, which is included in our budget. If the Board of Finance wants to consider alternatives for funding roads, we suggest 2 options. One option is if you want to fund roads entirely from the operating and LoCIP accounts, you could fund $1.2 million at the current road condition. You would have to add $645,000 to our operating budget in order to accomplish that. If you want to fund the roads at $1.8 million, which is improved level of roads, again, it's all about what level and what policy decision you want to have as to what condition you want your roads in. You would have to add back $1.25 million to the operating budget.
You're talking on a recurrent basis going out ad infinitum.
Correct. Well, for the next 4 years with that additional funding, but the $1.2 million would be the current funding going forward, once you reach
Well,
that.
what Barbara's been interested in getting
Correct.
is getting us on a regular maintenance program where it's being funded out of the budget on a regular basis and not going to bonding.
Correct. So the other option that we can talk about is a hybrid type of situation where you fund $1.2 million under the current road condition, and then you add $645,000 to the operating budget to get to the current condition. And then at $1.8 million, you would have to add $645,000 to the operating budget, and then you would have to bond about $1.2 million.
I think,
I'm probably speaking for Barbara again, but
I was going to speak, but go ahead.
well, I think you're interested in getting a fairly detailed listing of the road improvements we've been doing over the last several years so that we can see how we can work into this kind of program?
Well, so just, if you look at the long-term, which we're just looking at for the first time tonight, if I'm reading it right, in every other year, he's asking for that 2.5. So
Correct.
there's $7.5 million in there, and then on the normal operating, there's another between 5 and 6
Correct.
every year.
Correct.
So that's not just 4 years, that's a 10-year period at this higher level of funding. And I'm just kind of wondering, since when he came to us, what I heard, and I maybe misunderstood him back then, the 1.2 was going to get him exactly what he needed, and he was caught up and he was comfortable that would get us, and we had a whole conversation on, he had numbers for them, but they're numbered of the quality of the roads, and, what quality road does Simsbury want to have, and, the different levels. But he was comfortable with where we were right now at 1.2. So,
Tough winter.
yeah, I guess, and a few more coming ahead.
I think
I don't think
though-
that's accurate, based on our conversations with Tom during the budget workshops and today. And, apologize, he could not be here tonight. But I think I asked Joe to take another look, since he's been here almost a week, and figured he could handle it. I asked him to, in response to your request, Barbara, did ask him to have a detailed conversation with Tom about the funding mechanism based on the assumption that you wanted to put it into the annual operating budget. So maybe Joe could just clarify.
Yes, Tom was comfortable with 1.2 million a year going out. But he said to maintain it to the level that I've been asked to by citizens, whether it was selectmen or board of finance members, that's not for me to decide. He had recommended the 1.8 million. As far as operating costs, your true operating costs associated with this is specifically the 1.2 million a year. That's your sustainability. The capital portion would be whatever the improvement to the roads, right? So if you guys determine that you wanted to maintain a higher level of, I don't know what you want to call it, road reliability, road use, that would be that $600,000 increment for the next 4 years.
Think of it like the platinum standard, right? And at 1.8 million, that you're going to fix that road before your neighbors call and say, my road needs to be fixed. At one
What
point,
you're recommending? The platinum in here?
and this is what
That's what the 1.8.
This is what Tom's at.
he said. It would take 4 more years to fund at the bonding level to get the roads up to that. We're not at that platinum level yet, because there's a number of roads that need to be replaced. But yes, that's the policy decision that has to be made, like all of our policy decisions. At what level are you going to offer services? Is it going to be the top rating, which costs more, or is it going to be an acceptable level? Tom, as the professional, just to finish the thought, he is comfortable as a public works director saying that at a $1.2 million level, you are funding roads at a very good level, and certainly in some cases much better than other towns fund their roads, and he's comfortable with the 1.2.
Barb, I think when we had our meeting, when Tom made that presentation, we had talked about our desire was to try to work on more in the operating budget long-term. So we suggested that we get a group together and try to, how do we feather it into the budget? Because you don't want to shock a budget and say, gee, by the way, I think you guys ought to put X in your operating costs, because that's not fair to shock a budget. So I think we should set up a group to work it in. I think, we got to go back to what we heard, but I think I heard that we needed to bring it up. We all heard different things at that meeting, but I think there's a need to bring the roads up the level and then maintain. So maybe they don't quite need all this capital looking long-term out. We're only being asked tonight to approve the first round, which it sounds like they need. And the question is, do we need the next 2 rounds? And that's where if we get a group together, we can find out if we really, truly need to keep going $2.5 million every other year. And work out a plan, and how do we get it back into the budget so we don't have to go through capital?
But Peter, if I just heard that's for platinum, and we're not at platinum, we're at a one, what he said, I think, was that, it's hard if he's not here, but that the 1.2 would hold where we were, and that the roads were respectable. That's what I heard at that last meeting.
And again, just to clarify, just to simplify, Tom felt very strongly that the bonding request of 2.5 combined with the annual operating budget was where we needed to be over fiscal year 15, 16 to hold to a good level. There's still roads that are going to need to be rebuilt. We haven't been maintaining our roads for long enough so that all our roads are in good condition where the prices drop because you're maintaining your roads. So if you maintain your roads, the cost drops because your maintenance costs drop because you're not rebuilding roads. For fiscal year 2015, 2016, this is the level of funding that he felt we needed to maintain it, not at the platinum standard, but at a good amount. And then, once we're at that point, have that conversation in year 3 about what is sustainable going forward in an operating budget.
Mary, will he be, if we have the public hearing and this goes forward, that number, will somebody make the presentation on the roads there?
Yeah, if you could clarify what you want, I mean, we can get crazy, so
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get,
we need some
Or maybe
direction
by-
as to how much
yeah.
you want.
Well, I don't think we need the 25-minute presentation that he gave
No, no, no.
us
Okay.
a year
Okay.
ago on all the 3 different methods.
Yeah, we can put together what this funding buys and what
Exactly.
condition, and then what
What this gets.
the differential what you would be giving up with other differentials. That's no problem.
because I think we need to get a better understanding. I mean, it was quite an eye-opening presentation he did back in the summer, and it's like, the graphs were impressive. He really understood the subject. I don't think we're doing it justice tonight to his presentation. Was very
If you
informative.
want to see it, I can.
Yeah, I know, yeah, I can't, I got 8,000 other things here, and I didn't bring
Can
that.
I just do one
Yeah.
more question? Would he have what he needed for next year? Because we want to figure out how to do this, and, this is
Yeah.
not the best year to add in a big additional amount, I understand that, but it never is. So would it be possible to look at maybe just 1 year's worth instead of bonding for 2 years ahead a year?
I think we just,
No, it's got 2.5 every other year, so would it be 1.2 till we work through on
we
as a group?
just split it in half. 1.25.
Well, right, but we may have a different solution by next year. So if we don't have to borrow that extra 1.2 because we're not going to use it for a year.
Oh, you're saying, just to clarify, how much can he spend?
Right, how much will he really need, right?
Yep, I can get that to you.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the downside would be if we did need it, we then pay the costs again of going to bond, and every time we do that, there's legal and other costs.
Well, if you look, though, they're going to bond anyhow for other stuff, so unless you're bonding just for that, and we don't
We can look
normally
at the
bond under
timing of
5
the
million.
bonds,
Yeah.
too. We can look at the timing, if the timing affects the bonding.
'Cause
I
I
think
realize-
Jeff raised a good point. I mean, I don't want to go to bond just for one project.
Right, I
We don't
thought.
typically, right?
No.
Well,
not
usually we
under 5
bunch and go
million.
for about 5 million. Usually we do about
Yeah.
5 million in
We
bonding.
don't necessarily go every year, we
No.
wait till we need to.
Right.
Last time we went was January of 13, so we're not planning on going this year,
Right.
so.
I have a question on the police service, if we're done with the roads, or I don't want to cut off
Thank you for
discussion.
providing that, Mary.
Yeah, you're welcome.
On the police, I just want to understand, it looks like from 14 to 15, we're going up
Where you at?
5? 4.
Four.
4. So we've got the increase of 92,000 year over year, primarily associated with the full-time position that the Board of Selectmen added in. I just want to understand, I guess, the reasoning, if in running the town, it was not viewed that we needed the added position.
It's not an added position.
It's a replacement position?
We do, to our credit of our department, they're CALIA accredited, and they do a great job, and they have a
Yeah.
real big focus on community policing.
Yep.
If you'll see, the police salary line item and particularly the police pension is very expensive. And,
Pension is, yeah.
it's, when every department is asked to take a little bit of a hit, and you're fully funding the police to do all, not just public safety, but all the other community service programs, then sometimes you say, in the interest of reducing the extremely high pension costs, you say, well, maybe we need to cut back on some of that community policing for 1 year till we can get some of the other costs under control. We have a number of vacancies that are coming up. It's going to take us time to fill those vacancies, so we wouldn't really be down one vacant position throughout the year, but the community. We had a number of residents say that public safety, they wanted that position restored, and you couldn't restore the position without increasing the Board of Selectmen budget. And so if you're trying to keep the budget at 1.5, something has to give. If you go up, as the Board of Selectmen did, increase the budget, then obviously it was a top priority.
So it appears that at least overtime has.
So when we reduced the full-time, when we didn't fill the vacancy that we were anticipating, we had to
Right.
increase the overtime because other officers would be assigned.
Right,
And when we
right.
added back the position, then you could reduce the.
The overtime to an extent. Okay, so the position,
So we're fully funding all police positions.
all positions which
Correct.
should have a corresponding decrease in overtime,
Correct.
unless we have somebody out
Again,
with disability or
right.
what have you.
If I could, just for purpose of clarification, that first police department, what's on my letter, you notice in the far right, it looks as if there's a cut of $40,000. But that is, the center area, the requested base and changes are what the department head requested. When the chief put together his budget, that $3,411,000 did not necessarily assume that most SROs were gonna be funded. He's just giving us the number of what it costs to run it. Now, that's why we were able to cut the $40,000, was half of one of the SROs. But at the time he presented his budget, we didn't know the Board of Ed would continue that relationship. So,
Right.
just to be safe, that's why it shows up there. It's not a cut. That's
It's not a
fully
cut,
funding for
it's,
36.
right, thank you, Sean.
Okay.
It reflects the Board of Ed contribution.
So if they contribute another 40, you'll reduce one of these items?
I don't
You would see
know,
that-
maybe the Board of Selectmen has some ideas to spend that 40,000, I don't.
Okay. Well, part of it makes it a little confusing is we got, for all the contract settlement, that adjustment where we adjusted the base. You look at last year's budget and then you look at how the estimates are coming in, because the estimates are really.
Yeah, it is
Because that
confusing for me.
whoops there kind of makes everything a little harder, so you got to look at three numbers at once and makes your eyes spin a little.
Yeah.
But I think everyone's done a great job. I'm happy with that decrease in the insurance. It helped tremendously on the Board of Ed side, and it's helped on your side. And it's a great savings, and I look forward to next year's savings. I hope we keep finding things like that, but that was excellent. I was very happy when I saw that. That makes budgets a lot easier.
It does, it certainly
No,
does.
I
And
was-
it wouldn't have happened without, staff being proactive and our town staff willing to negotiate with us, and so the credit goes to really our staff.
I know you had mentioned, Peter, at a future meeting, talking about the impact, or potential impact, to the extent that the Hartford doesn't find a tenant down the road, and kudos, to the town on the economic development efforts for the $500,000 increase in revenue. And I'm wondering if maybe before that meeting, we might get projections for what's in the pipeline, just to get a better sense.
Yeah.
Obviously, nothing's certain.
Good point.
But just a sense of.
Good point,
Well,
Jeff.
what we had talked about, Mary, is we're talking about planning in case we do have a shock event to our budget, or as they call a black swan event. The Hartford decides to tear their building down. What would we do? And we just want to, I figure it couldn't happen for a couple years out, couple budget years out. You realize anything like that could happen, assuming worst-case scenario. So we were just trying to plan, just have a financial plan in
Absolutely.
case something happened. I don't want to
Absolutely.
tax the citizens. We got some reserves. We were just trying to come up with a way we could factor it into the budget. And, obviously with economic development
Right.
growth, softens the impact. So just, we're going to get a group looking at it. and it
Well,
would just,
actually, we have been looking at it for the last 5 years. We put together the Hartford Task Force to look at that question specifically. We also, over the last several years, have noticed a decrease in personal property in the Hartford, so we had already started anticipating. We might see changes in that line item. When we realized that the Hartford generates $1.2 million in tax, both real estate and personal property tax, we began many of the initiatives that are now bearing fruit. The form-based code, the first in the state, the center area long-term planning, the marketing study that the town did. So $500,000 has already been replaced of the $1.2 million, if you look at it that way. We don't, not included in that projection are things that we already know are in the pipeline that haven't come online. So I think, Jeff, your point is well taken, and we'll present that at your next meeting, because I think what we'll find is by fiscal year 2016, we will have more than made up for that 1.2 million that we, even if we lost all of it, which is not likely, we would more than make up for it.
Although we've also used that
Exactly.
additional
Right, no, I mean,
to fund
exactly.
increases.
My
So
point is,
it's not really
a shock.
offsetting.
It's not something that happened overnight that we weren't planning for, that
Right,
we
sure.
weren't aware of, that we aren't aggressively
Yeah.
working on. And in the meantime, the Hartford is aggressively marketing the site, so there'll be new revenue coming in. So I think for this, going into this budget year, we're in very good shape.
But see, unfortunately, if they moved out and they tore down the building, we would be dealt with the reality of changing the mill rate to offset that, or asking your board and the other board to cut expenses.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's fair to do that as a total expense reduction or tax increase. So we have to do a plan that factors it in. It's been mitigated by what's been happening.
Correct.
But there still is the reality that we could have an event that could cause a little financial shock. So I just want to make sure we're ready for it from our standpoint, so we don't shock the citizens, we phase it in. And I think we have the resources and we just have to get agreement as to what's the best way to approach it, so we're not sitting there wondering what to do when it happens.
Well, quite
That's our-
frankly, we've already gone through that shock. When we had the FEMA disaster, we spent $30 million.
Yep.
That's twice of what the Hartford generates in revenue.
But I don't think we're going to have somebody who's going to give us most of that $3 million
No,
back.
correct. But my point is that, I think because of budgets that have been extremely conservative on the town side, and, keeping the mill rate low, keeping reserves up, certainly allows you some flexibility when you deal with unforeseen circumstances.
I know when we approved that expenditure, my stomach's been turning for a few years after that. Then finally, they did such a great job that we came out way better than I figured. So the town staff did a great job on that disaster, because other towns didn't fare as well as ours.
Right.
So I was impressed. So we survived it, but it still made you nervous while we were going through it.
Do we have any indication on the fire district, the 1.2? I know the Board of Selectmen has no authority over the fire district, but do we know if they've approved a budget, and are they holding steady at 1.2? Are they going to come down?
I know usually the Board of
Both Peter and I have asked Kevin North, who's been very close to the fire district, what he knows at this point. And to the best of his knowledge, he said they're probably going to keep the rate of 1.22 flat at this point.
Do you know when that public hearing is, that folks can anticipate?
Don't know.
Maybe we should publicize that.
Do we know, is it on their budget on the website, or they provide that? It would be useful, I think, for the town to see that too, because there's so much scrutiny over the Board of Education and Board of Selectmen budget, and with their having rebuilt many of the stations, 1.2%, but yours is only, 7.6% or what have you, so.
I don't think that's an increase.
7.6 mils rather, and there's only 1.2 mils, but still, it would be useful to know if they've been able to achieve some operating efficiencies from the new departments, and hopefully hold the line on their budget. Although
We can
have
get
no
you a
control.
copy for your next meeting. I'll be happy to get that for you.
You want to talk about my favorite subject, Parks and Recreation?
Absolutely.
What have you got in here?
The Parks and Recreation budget as adopted by the Board of Selectmen and balances.
I'm under tab 7. Yeah.
Okay. 7's library, isn't it?
No, it's library and Parks and Recreation.
The library gets the culture part.
Culture part's all right.
Yeah.
Oh, I see that.
So the Board of Selectmen asked Jerry to come back with a budget that balanced, and that was the resolution that was adopted, and that's what's the line item that's in your budget. He did a number of changes, and I'm going to try to get a copy of those for you. We did a combination of increasing fees, new programs. The Parks and Recreation Commission adopted renting at the allowing the Apple Barn to be rented, so that'll bring additional revenue in. There were additional reductions
This is the Simsbury Farms Fund, right?
Correct, the special revenue.
So that's in a different tab, that's in tab
Yeah.
12?
Tab 7 is the
The
town.
Town side of the Parks and Rec, but this,
You're talking about Simsbury revenue?
Oh, I was talking about the revenue
yeah,
fund.
I mean, they're kind of,
We can do either of them because they're intertwined.
So I'll start with the revenue fund, because we did ask for a balanced budget, and we did ask for a list of changes that we needed to make in order to do that. And those included reducing supplies in the complex maintenance line item, in postponing an advertising program for the golf maintenance, in eliminating weekend front desk coverage, in rebidding the credit card vendor. We had a significant amount of savings in rebidding that vending contract. There were a number of positions in the program account that were eliminated. On the revenue side, there were additional weekend lessons added, increases in season pass rates. As I said earlier, rental of the Apple Barn for the first time, which we anticipate will bring additional revenue in. Additional costs for resident ID cards at the golf course, and increasing the season pass rates for 2015. On the complex side, there's increases, small increases you'll see in program fees. There's a new program of youth basketball and adult fitness that was added that will bring in about $9,000 in new revenues. The Simsbury Farms ice rink, which had which met its revenue projections and expenditures this year for the first time, we'll see small rental rate increases. And in the paddle tennis courts, we had increased the rates to those fees as well.
But we're talking about revenue and expenses of $1,914,000 approximately.
Yeah.
no, didn't you, aren't they $1,877,000? There's like two in there, I guess that's confusing.
Yeah.
So,
think
Mary,
it
would
went
you
down.
mind just walking us through what these, because this spreadsheet, we're just seeing it tonight for the first time, and the spreadsheet's a little different than the other pages.
I have a different book.
What are you looking at?
I think they approved,
But that looks like it's a current year, and it's not next
see,
year?
according to this, they approved $1,877,200,
No, I think I need them both.
but this has $1,914,000.
Right, but it says current year on it, too, so
Yeah,
that's
but
why I'm asking.
I think the approved one was $1,877,000.
Yes, what happened
200.
was there was a reduction, some of the CNR chargeback was carried forwarded for next year, and it was gonna come off the books.
Gotcha.
So we had a decrease of about 37,000 off that 1.9, which brought us down to the 1.8.
Jerry actually just sent us the 5 years.
Oh, great. My tab,
See, page that.
I only have one page. Should be 3 pages, I think.
That and roads.
Well, I mean, Peter and I are sitting
Really
around
about
that
that,
committee
yeah.
here trying.
That's why I was
We should be doing some accounting and so forth here, so.
I don't understand this schedule.
So
This one will probably make
Unless they put it.
the number that you should be looking at is the Simsbury Farms Special Revenue Fund was approved at 1.877,200.
Right, that's the one we're going, right,
Yes.
yeah.
I think
And these are the broad categories. Barb, this schedule's a lot easier. It's everything kind of condensed into
these are
the basic areas. They got expenses first and revenues down the bottom. People have that sheet.
But Mary, at this point, you haven't made any changes in the allocation on the administration
We have
or
not.
any of that kind of
No,
stuff?
we have
Because
not.
that's what the little subcommittee is going to take a
Exactly.
look at over the next year, I think.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're also looking at use of the Apple Barn, not the Apple Barn, but the Simsbury Farms building off-season. There's some other utility savings that we're looking at.
On the revenue side, they really, I mean, this is the accountant in me coming out, so I look at the historic numbers. The best year we ever had on golf was $875,000 back in 9-10. And now we think we're gonna make 9-10, we're gonna make
910.
35,000 more. They really think they can get fees up? I mean, I know a lot of that's weather-related, so it's really hard to project.
I had a similar question just about the estimates of the revenues, if you felt comfortable with where they are, particularly like something like the Apple Barn also coming online
Yeah.
for the first time, how you arrived at those revenues.
We asked the same question in our budget workshops, and you have been well-trained.
And, so I think those are fair questions, and I think that that's certainly something that we can dig deeper in the subcommittee, but we did scrutinize those numbers. We did ask those questions with declining enrollment and other numbers going down. We were very cautious about accepting the revenue projections. We did ask the Parks and Rec Commission to go back and look at the revenues and expenditures
Do we have a feel for this year's budget, how they're doing? I mean, I know everything kind of comes in at the last month. Do we have any feel as to how this
Well, the
budget
Board
we're
of
into?
Selectmen's invited Jerry come to our meetings once a month, and so we'll be monitoring
Good.
the revenues and expenditures on a monthly basis. We'll also work with Joe to get a closer look at some of the,
We're very subjective on the revenue stream based on their April-May timeframe.
Right.
Of course, it's going to be opening later, and
Right.
we'll see when the revenue starts coming.
Is there any way to quickly change midstream expenses if revenues fall short?
There is, and it is adjusted. I mean, for example, we don't know when the pools will open because we have to wait till when schools close and what the weather is. And certainly we delay hiring in those areas. We are doing an overview of our hiring procedures in all parks and rec areas. And so we're doing an audit and overview of that to see if there's any opportunities to save money or to streamline some, or to hire less or hire more, depending on what level you hire. We'd like to get more new people in. There are a lot of kids looking for jobs, so want to balance the number of returning workers with new workers, make sure we keep the balance. So we're looking at all those. We're auditing all of those hiring procedures.
I mean, the reason, obviously in my mind, I'm glad Nick asked the question because I was going to, because you can see down the bottom there, the result. Back in 09, 09-10, we made money there, but the only reason we made money is the town subsidized it, $65,000, and the way the admin fees were at the top. So then once we took the $65,000 away, between that and somehow the revenues never came out the same, it went negative. So it's been negative for I don't know what this year is like. So we've gone negative, so, and that's why we're being asked to take money out of reserves to get it up, because the fund's in a deficit of about $250,000 range over the years.
Well, not only the subsidy you're talking about it, but if you look at the top line in the administration over in the upper right-hand corner there, it goes from 153 to 148 and then jumps to 199. Now, that's just a change in the allocation rate that's going on there. And I think, that's part of what we're going to have to look at. But I think the philosophical question that underlies this, I mean, just like the taxpayers subsidize the library, the question in my mind is how much should the taxpayer be subsidizing, a valuable asset that we've got in Simsbury Farms for recreation. So that's sort of the unknown out there.
When they presented too, I think there was that fine line, where do you strike the balance? You raise fees, but then we have competitors then perhaps who have lower fees, and we don't attract as many out-of-town people who pay higher, what do you call them, green fees, or whatever it is. I'm not a golfer.
And I think we are exactly right. I think we have to take a closer look at what basic level services you want to offer, what's not making money, and whether we continue to offer things that aren't making money. There are a lot of choices now. It used to be, Parks and Rec programs were the only programs offered. Well, there are a lot of opportunities for choices. So are we still offering the same programs, and do we need to readjust, offer different programs or less? So that's what we're looking at.
Yeah. So budgeting-wise, if we can't get it right side up, eventually, it comes out of reserves, or we budget for it up front. So that's the choice. And the question is, can they make it support itself? If they can, then that's the ideal situation. So that's what I think they're trying to do. That's what I'm hearing.
Yep.
So, looks good to me if it works. So I hope it does.
Yeah, and I very much appreciate everybody who's volunteering their time to really dig deep into asking those questions about what level of services do we want to offer and how we pay for them, because
Well, I think I'd echo the six of us in making a request that from time to time, we get an update report from Jerry Toner on just, what the status of the fund is, because I think we sort of were left not understanding what was going to, take place at the end of the last fiscal year. We we ended up with a deficit that I don't think any of us anticipated.
Absolutely. We'll make sure we get that to you.
It seems like a lot of the kids' programs in the summer were they had waiting lists. And so to your point, kind of adjusting and where do we, if we're making money, let's increase perhaps those services and others, maybe we pull back.
Yeah, I think it's important to look at, we contract out a lot of services, so do we pull those back? And, one of these new initiatives that Jerry recommended this year is bringing back youth basketball. It's something we moved away from, but there's a need for it. So, I think it's important to look at what does it cost our residents and what level of services are we providing?
Can I shift gears a little and go to the sewer operating fund? Seeing that I'm a sewer user, one of the 40% or whatever, 42%. Now, is the fee in here? My eyes weren't working that good, but when I read this thing this afternoon, is the sewer use fee proposed to go up? Is that saying flat? I couldn't see where anybody said that was going up.
There was
Is it
no,
10?
recommended fee increase.
Yeah. I mean, I see their budget, they got their budget up 5.5%, but
What tab are you on?
No,
Ten.
no
Is that-
changes in the user fees.
no change in the user fee. Okay, so they're projecting a good year or under. I know we have adequate reserves there, and I know we always, instead of bonding, have them use their reserves.
Yes.
I know in the capital, they got some capital requests, but those capital requests are going to be paid for out of the operating fund here,
Yes.
right? That's what my understanding is?
We moved the fee, 2 years ago?
Yeah. So that fee is stable, it's adequate, it's,
Yeah.
because we should be getting more hookups now. I mean, with everything that's coming on, you see, I assume with the apartments and everything else,
Yes.
we should be getting a lot more.
We reduced the fee.
Well, no, but I mean, I remember when Kevin Kane did a projection many years ago, and we added on the plant, the risk was we needed to make it, to be whole, is we had to get some more users, and I think that's happening.
Yes, it is.
When he did that projection, if we could ever find it, but it was a lengthy projection.
Are they at the level, though, that Kevin projected at? I mean, we did reduce.
Yeah. But I think, but the thing is, we were even anticipating using some reserves, but we haven't had to use them. So if operationally we're whole, then we're ahead of schedule in my mind. So I think we're ahead.
Yeah.
And now, these funds are well reserved. We have a sewer operating reserve and sewer assessment, which we can only use for these purposes.
Correct.
We can't use them for any other purposes. So that's why when we do capital, just keep that in mind. Use those reserves there.
It's interesting. I mean, I always thought it would be nice if you could adjust the assessments in those homes who use the sewer service by a corresponding amount to net out whatever it is, $220 a year, because then it would be a tax deduction on your federal tax return, but currently you cannot deduct those expenses.
Correct.
So,
What's the fee,
You're talking about
330?
rolling it
Just a thought.
into the tax bill.
Tax-
Yeah, but you don't have everyone on it.
yeah, that's.
Some towns do that. I
Yeah.
mean, there's no question about
Towns
it.
But our whole town's not sewered.
No, that's why I'm
I
saying
will
you'd have
speak on
to,
behalf of those of us who are not on the sewer. I do not want it in our tax bill.
you'd have to adjust.
I think it's a good idea.
That's what I'm saying, you'd have to.
high in the air.
You'd have to adjust the assessments. So those that are hooked up would actually have a higher assessment that would net out.
Right.
220.
We pay, there's a higher.
So
we-
the other
we
thing
get
is,
it.
pay
a couple
for
of
it
years
anyway.
ago, we had an update from them because we had a concern that maybe they were overcharging because their reserves had built up so much. One of the things I see in here is an $18 million project for West Mountain Road in 1819, which is way out.
It is.
But I guess I'd like to make sure that they're going to have enough in reserves by the time they get there to be able to fund an $18 million.
We can get you an update.
Okay.
I think isn't that going to be for, usually it's a special assessment,
It is, but
so therefore the people whose homes it goes in front, they end up paying for it, so it doesn't cost us anything?
Yeah, I remember Rich talked about that last.
Yeah, I think Barb, what those are, the large projects are this, when they put a line down the street, then all the people they put it in front of your house, you pay that special assessment.
we actually have a new Water Pollution Control Authority director, and I think it might be helpful for you to meet him and have him maybe make a presentation.
That'd be
just
great.
to answer some things, so we'll
Yeah, that'd be
schedule
good.
that at your convenience.
This is just a placeholder.
It's a big one, though.
Big placeholder.
The IT task force, I think you said many members are here tonight. I don't know, if maybe just want to touch on some of the recommendations or just some of the improvements that we're going to see and thank them for
Yeah, thanks,
not
Jeff.
only all their time and effort, but also attending this meeting.
Yeah, no, thanks, Jeff. And I would just ask Lizano to kind of run through it quickly. And I want to thank Lisa Hebner and Pam Lacker who led the group. So if you want to just introduce yourself, that would be great.
I'm Pam Lacko, and with me tonight is most of our Simsbury Technology Task Force. We've been together almost a year now, and I have to compliment Rick and his staff for the last 15 years of keeping everything on a day-to-day basis moving forward, adding technology and not adding staff, and giving us open book to what the town has been doing and what we need to do, and we're very proud that Mary and Rick and company have listened to us. This is a group of very diverse technologists in front of you, and very quickly worked to find out what was here, what was necessary, and how to bring it forward in a cost-effective way.
Thank you.
Do you want to just quickly introduce yourself?
Go ahead, Laura. I'm Laura Henneberry.
Mark Ornstein.
Ray Rosati.
I'm Mahin Shukla.
Thank
And
you.
we could not have afforded to pay them what they donated so graciously.
It's been a long time since we did have a technology task force. It used to be a joint town and Board of Ed, and we've had great conversations with the Board of Ed, and going forward, we'll be reestablishing that joint committee. But this was a great opportunity to really look at what it would take to implement the initiatives that the town feels we should be implementing. For example, fiber optics connecting our buildings. There's a grant that is going to be made available to communities to do the Nutmeg Network, which is connecting all of the communities, all of your municipal buildings. That was previously afforded to boards of ed at no cost, but not to towns, so we need to play catch up. But in order to do that, there were certain improvements that needed to be made on the town's technology staffing levels and on our infrastructure. And thanks to the Technology Task Force, we have a combination in this budget of additional staff, one additional staff person, based on the number of devices and the number of users and number of problems. And then also in our capital plan, which we can review at your convenience, you'll see a number of requests to integrate technology across our departments. These include fiber optic build-out projects for Public Works and the Nutmeg Network that we just talked about, network storage and recovery for the town and police departments, network services replacement for town offices, Public Works, Simsbury Farms, public safety equipment replacement, cruiser cameras and mobile data terminals, taser technology to upgrade what's required for our police officers, and support staffing for the library and copy projects, and GIS mapping and data management system intranet services. There's been a lot of interest in the town in making our GIS. We do have GIS capabilities, but those aren't available to the public. They're really used internally. We do have an interest in making those available to the public. In order to do that, you need the staff to keep the information current, because if you don't have the staff to input the data, then the system doesn't work. So we need to make sure we have the staffing capacity in order to implement a lot of the technology advancements and improvements that that the town wants. And that will experience cost savings. We've seen, just anecdotally, the amount of money we're saving just by having folks sign up for online tax payments. And the amount of savings both on postage and the capability of reminding residents through emails to pay their bill, which we can't do on paper.
Mary, how much is in the operating side, how much is in the capital side? You got about 600 here in the capital, I see.
Oh, okay. Rick has a breakdown in what we included, and I'm happy to say we included all of the Technology Task Force recommendations into the budget.
And the first number's not 50, it's at 5550, which is on the budget side, and the rest of it is all CIP.
Thank you. It's 50.
My recollection is about 5 years ago, we were talking about doing a GIS project, and the cost was $600,000 or so.
Big number, yeah.
It was a big number, but what we're doing now is obviously far less than that.
Yeah, we're not, doesn't include the GIS updates. This gets us to the infrastructure that we need to implement the GIS system.
And we're using it for the land use departments primarily?
So, actually, in some cases, it's less expensive to do our GIS system now than it would have been had we implemented it earlier. But there are also other options for us. Capital Region Council of Governments is now offering a regional GIS system, so towns don't have to buy the system themselves. We can combine with 30 other towns, so we're looking at that option. I think the Technology Task Force, and feel free to chime in, but felt that these recommendations that we are funding in this year's budget, both in the operating and capital, are needed before we have a serious conversation on GIS next phase. Is that accurate?
These are very basic things that have been neglected for many years. The staff that you have had supporting all of the locations in the town has been in place for 15 years. And the technology has just been rolled out year after year after year. So one of our first tasks was to ask the public how they would want our website to be changed. And we quickly found out we couldn't make the changes. We didn't have the staff to do it. Just running the day-to-day operation takes both Rick and Brett full-time. So these are very, very necessary, and the additional staff person is necessary for us to be able to even implement these.
It's also when you playing catch up, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the conversation, just listening to the conversation about the roads a little while ago. When you think about technology and what's needed for a basic infrastructure for the health and welfare of the town, and what we've really been putting into it, our backup right now is a bunch of servers in a closet in one of the schools. I mean, when you think about that kind of, quite frankly, antiquated infrastructure, it's disconcerting. So that's really what we tried to look at, is how can we begin in a reasonable, moderate way, begin to try to get our infrastructure where it should be for the welfare of the town.
How's your vision as far as we spend this money now with the operating and the capital? Will this get us up to where we should be, or is this just starting to move us in that direction?
It's certainly starting to move us in that direction, but we have many more tasks I think that the task force needs to look at in order to put a strategy forth. So this is to bring us up to where we should be now, but we have a whole discussion ahead of us on where we need to be strategically.
Because we're going to be doing some long-range planning, and we'll need something like that when we get the group, just on where you see the 5-year plan, and as we start talking about long-range planning in the town.
And the Nutmeg Network is a big part of this, too. We really need to understand what's available now, what's going to be available in year 1, year 2, and that's going to be a big part of our conversation.
That's exactly right, and it's really a credit to the task force in getting us to this point. And a number of members of CROG, we've been lobbying up at the Capitol for the Nutmeg Network funding, and this will provide us the capacity to begin to share some services that we can't share now. For example, finance packages that you have to buy are very expensive and need to be updated. Once the Nutmeg Network is in place and towns can take advantage of it, we can actually share the financial packages and save hundreds of thousands of dollars. So while the small sharing services is helpful, saving big amounts of money is really exciting. And in order to be able to take advantage of those opportunities for sharing services, we have to have the infrastructure in place in order to take advantage of it.
And this is all in concert with the Board of Ed, what they're doing with their...
The fiber piece that you see there, just to break that down, the fiber piece has already been talked about with the Board of Ed, and that's really to connect to their already existing fiber piece. There's savings in that. It hasn't been really gathered up, but that fiber piece is really for the Hot Meadow project, which is going to go from Masako, which is a Board of Ed, Spice Point for their opticals, all the way down Hot Meadow to the Water Pollution Control Facility to really take in water pollution control, Eno Memorial, the Senior Center, the library, and bring all those services back. So there's going to be phone services, data service savings there as well. And then we're going to go up West Street to connect to the schools as well. So there's going to be a fiber loop. So we're really building off of what they already have in place. So we're being very cost conscious on that.
The Board of Ed is much farther along than the town side. And part of that is because the connections were offered free to educational components, not to town. So we had to fund this ourselves. Now, the Nutmeg Network, the bill that we have worked hard to pass, will provide funding similar to the education funding as well.
There was a significant bonding effort that took place on the Board of Ed side.
Yes. And so they're much farther along than town side, and so credit to the Technology Task Force, and they've had many meetings with the Board of Ed, who's been very cooperative in telling us how far ahead they are and how much we have to do to connect and keep up with them. And then again, we'll be ready to share even more opportunities.
Peter, just a quick comment. The very last item on here, you'll always hear me say I don't want to borrow money to do things that should come out of operating plan, and hiring a consultant is one of those things that I'd rather see us pay for when we decide we need to do it than to borrow money and bond to be able to hire a consultant for this year.
Great, we'd be happy to have you pay for it.
Well,
Okay.
it goes into the budget.
Well, we can put it on the list.
Well, it's a one-time, it's not really an operating cost either, so that was what the Board of Selectmen wrestled with. If you add too many consultant long-term studies into the budget, you have a hole next year of $50,000 that you're going to fill. So it's really, we didn't feel it was appropriate to put
What we
a
can do, though-
long-term study in an operating budget.
But what we can do is instead of bonding, we can pay cash out of reserves for it
Yeah, I
or
mean,
something like that.
there's all kinds of funding mechanisms, but
That's what we can do.
we specifically didn't put it in the operating budget because.
Or when we get in our discussion on capital, we can add it in. It's not just a debt service / capital budget. We can pay for it out of there.
Yep.
Because, so we can put whatever we want in there.
Absolutely.
Because right now, that budget's projected to go down, and we can keep it level when we start looking at the numbers after this. Now, as far as operating budgets, does anyone have any more operating questions before we get into capital? Mary?
No, I feel comfortable with what they put together. Do we want to talk about the 1.07% increase before we move on? Or we don't have to take any action tonight, but.
Well, we're going to move something along to the public hearing. We're not going to formally approve anything, but decide what we want to move along.
Can I just ask Mary one question? So I know you said you had to make some hard decisions and made some service reductions, but then some things got restored that
Yes.
you would have cut. So with all the restorations, what are the service reductions that are now in the budget with the 2.2% increase? Because the police FTE got added back, and did the library get added back?
There was a reduction of staff.
Library got added.
Well, transferred. In the library, the library board, in discussions with the library director, their priority was additional teen librarian. They felt that was a service that was really needed, and they felt they were willing to reduce the line item for administrative support, since that was not a frontline position, it's not a service position. They choose, and they had to choose because we didn't have the funding available for everything. They chose to fund the teen librarian. So the reduction in the library is because of that administrative position. We did, there was a number of reductions. We did reduce conferences for our staff. We spent a lot of time reviewing what conferences our staff needed to go to maintain their certifications and their licenses. And, we feel very strongly that educating our staff provides us with an opportunity for our staff to learn best practices. So we really wanted to fund that at a higher level. We didn't. It was reduced. We did reduce the land use zoning regs request for a consultant. You'll be getting a request to fund that $25,000 for a zoning reg review as a transfer at the end of the year, because the Board of Selectmen, again, felt it was important but did not feel it was appropriate for an operating cost since it was a one-time expense. And that was something that wasn't in the original budget request that was reduced. There was additional funding for Main Street that was reduced. There was additional funding for the marketing plan that was reduced. There was additional funding in, request for funding of a town clerk part-time position that was not funded. There was additional request for a Simsbury Meadows master plan. Again, the board felt that was important, but didn't feel it was appropriate for a operating budget. It was funded as part of the capital plan. When you see the capital plan in a minute, that was funded in that item. There was additional request for part-time administrative assistance in the engineering department that was not funded. Again, that's not, we focused on funding frontline direct services to our staff, so anything that was not direct service to our staff was reduced. We did reduce road supplies, not salt, of $7,500 and added back $60,000. There were some sidewalk funds that the Public Works Director asked for. We eliminated that request, but instead started working on a sidewalk policy so we could determine when the town would repair sidewalks and when we would make it the responsibility of the property owner. So we were working through that policy. We did, the other items that were reduced were based on the recommendations of professionals, so the reductions in the healthcare, those were a direct result of savings that were recommended by our professionals, and we did follow those to the dime. We didn't make any changes on that.
So it doesn't sound to me like there's anything that the basic constituent is going to see as a service reduction.
No, you'll actually see, on the service side, you'll actually see probably more service through the technology improvements, through the teen librarian, through the additional improvements in trail maintenance. So you'll see those improvements on our trails.
Don't forget the road.
Trails, meaning the bike trails? The bike trail or?
The walking, anything that's designated a trail, so you'll see those are maintained. We did add back funding in trees as well, so we do want to keep on top of tree maintenance, which sometimes suffers when you're looking at budgets, but we're careful not to do that.
Having been on the library board for a couple of years, I'm very happy to see the teen librarian funded, that they were able to make those tough choices in prioritizing what they could give up in order to make that happen, because that is a service that was lacking.
Let's say we have some good news from the Board of Ed, and we leave your budget alone and we don't reduce it, but you get some relief. So I assume you could find a way to use that money to maybe restore some of the things that you've taken out to good use, or would you recommend we change your budget down?
I would take that back to the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah. Okay.
How about we use it for roads?
How about we use it for reducing taxes?
Okay. Well, we'll let them decide. But
Higher when you
if
borrow
we,
to pay for roads.
A new
No,
job?
she's saying if she got money.
Any other-
From education.
I thought I saw Bert come in. I don't know if he has any news for us on.
Mary, you mentioned Main Street. That's under,
That went from 50 to 40? Is that right?
is that under
It went from
community
50 to
development?
45, under the adopted scenario.
What tab?
Is that public agency support?
Planning and development.
Where you at now?
Tab
Three?
1, page 2.
Economic development.
Trying to figure out where.
Agency support for that.
I believe in the recommended budget, the Economic Development Commission gets $83,000 to spend on economic development initiatives. Those include Main Street, a marketing plan, a website, a video, and we've asked the Economic Development Commission to give us a plan before that money's spent, so we're not releasing any money until we have an actual plan and expenditure.
So the website's funded, that's good. I think that's important.
My recollection from a long time ago when I chaired economic development was that the revenue generated or the donations generated from every dollar that was invested in the Main Street program was pretty significant. I mean, for every dollar that we put in, I think they returned back $8 or something along those lines.
It's a great program. I know Anita Mueller's here, and Anita was responsible for starting not only the Simsbury program, but the statewide program. And, we've been fortunate to have a very vibrant program. I think there was a lot of discussion over that $5,000 reduction because we feel so strongly and supportive of the program. But the budget is very tight, as you can see, and when you're reducing staff and eliminating other positions, the board tried to be fair in terms of inflicting pain on everyone equally. So I think that was
I had a recent request, an email I saw to start updating the website for the Economic Development Commission.
Yeah, what happens on the websites are staff supported. One of the things you heard earlier from the Technology Task Force, we don't have a webmaster in the town. We don't fund a full-time position. So some department sites are much better than others. The Economic Development site is not as robust as it should be. So the Economic Development Commission is going to work, as the Library Board has done, as Parks and Rec Department has done, to upgrade the website. They would like an additional web address as well, in addition to the town website, so they're working through, there's additional costs for that as well. But right now, they could update the website with no cost. It's, as every other department has done, so we're working with them on that.
Mary, could you walk us through the capital non-recurring fund? I know that's kind of the in-between fund, between capital and between operating.
They need money.
So,
That's tab 13, I believe.
Update a website with money.
Tab 13 is capital non-recurring, if we want to just kind of,
We need to buy software. They've been told they can't do it without.
so the little guy.
Economic development is important.
ask Bert why they're in a-
That goes to our website. It's easy to think of the name of commissioners.
Yeah,
Doesn't help them at all. It's a lousy page.
Oh, goodness, Burke's here, thank goodness. Stop talking now. Do they have a copy of that? Okay.
So we're on tab 12.
Tab 13.
13?
We're on tab 13.
Yeah.
Will work.
we have $416,000 worth of requests there
Yeah, will work from, so this doesn't include that,
before the low SIP.
right? So you added the police speed sign. Okay, all right. So we'll go through tab 13. We are within the allocation as directed by the Board of Finance with our total of $416,250. You have backup of each of the items. The first is a plow truck that we had recommended. This is to replace a highway department plow truck. It's done on a regular basis. It includes everything except for a new plow. It's not included in this request. And that was recommended for funding. The next item is a highway plate compactor. That was a request for $5,250. The next item was for repair and upgrade of facilities at the community farm. If you'll recall, the community farm is owned by the town, it's an asset of the town as a result of an agreement we have. We rent to the community farm to use it for growing vegetables, and those vegetables and items are then given free to our residents through our social services department. So it's been a very good relationship for the town. They've done a lot of improvements, and there's a total of $14,500 in improvements to the facility there that need to be made. There is a police patrol vehicles. 3 police patrol vehicles are also included in the request for a total of $87,000. We did add, since we were a little below our requirements, a police fixed speed sign for $2,800. There's golf course.
It's not going to give out tickets, is it?
You'll see it on the main list. Do you have this list?
But what's a fixed speed sign?
Oh, it's like one of those flashing signs.
When you go, it tells you
you're
the speed limit
driving too
30.
fast.
If you're going too fast, it starts.
We
right at
did
you.
install one in Terrafil, and we did see that it does have
Does have an
a
impact.
positive impact on reducing speed, so we would add one of those.
Impacts me.
There's a request for $75,000 in golf course maintenance equipment. There's a request for $88,000 in park maintenance equipment and $3,700 in library maintenance equipment.
Now, the chargeback is over to the right, so you're charging back the general fund for all these? Even though some of them's for the Simsbury Farms, the general fund's gonna pay in their budget, they're gonna pay for it.
Yes, they're charged back to the general fund.
Right, because some years, we've charged Simsbury Farms for its equipment. A couple of years ago, we've done that, and so now it's being charged all to the general fund here.
I think that's to give us a year to take a look at how we
Yeah.
charge back to the special fund and not to put too much additional stress on them. We did take the capital out.
So just being new, can you explain this chargeback methodology a little?
Basically, you
So let's take the
pay an item, you
plow
pay
truck.
20%. So over 5 years,
Okay,
you're
so you're
gonna...
just spreading out the 140 over 5 years.
Basically, it's like short-term financing. So they get the money up front, and then 5 years, they work it into their budget. So you'll see they have $416,000 they're spending. Their budget's going to absorb $342,000. So that means they've increased the expending and it hasn't quite caught up. Eventually, whatever they spend will be charged back once they get caught up to the new level. So that's a way to get these items, to make sure they keep buying these type of items. And we funded it with cash up front, so it's where we've had extra money, we've put it over into this fund to allow them to pay for it, so we have money to pay for it. And the Board of Ed has a different amount, but
It's a total of $1 million, isn't it?
it's about $1 million that gets spent out of here.
But it keeps us from having to go to bonding all the time. and-
Sure.
It's equipment-type items, shorter-term items that you wouldn't bond for. Like,
And there's a restriction how much of the total percent, right?
Sorry?
Is there
Yeah.
a restriction, is it 1% or no?
there's some statute restriction, yeah.
It's a statutory
Yeah.
restriction, I don't remember the.
But we fund it would have cash, and they just pay back the fund, and then they borrow it again.
Yeah.
So it's a revolving,
So we're
Loan account.
loaning it to ourselves. yeah.
loaning it to ourselves, that's what we're doing. At no interest. So,
There's an opportunity cost, and you know it.
that's true. And also, you have that low-SIP paving down here to make matters more confusing.
Correct. That, even though it's funded through LoSiP, it has to be appropriated, so it does show up on the capital.
So we get a grant from LoSiP, and then we just run it through the capital non-recurring, and
Is it supposed to go down next year, Mary? From 180 down to?
Pardon me?
Is it supposed to go down from 180 to 155
Yeah, we
next year?
budget the governor's recommended
What they put in the-
budget.
Yeah, right.
Did everybody go down on that program, or just Simsbury?
No, pretty much everybody went down. There's less money funded.
We went up last year, I think.
We went up.
last year it's up, now it's back down to where it was a couple of years ago.
Now, that number could change, but it's the best estimate we have at this point in time, so that's.
Wait till they see the potholes this year.
I mean, the theory is if you get more LoSiP, we'd spend less somewhere else, but,
Sure.
it's the whole picture, operating budget, this, and the capital, there's a lot goes into the picture on the roads. Anyone else have any questions on capital non-recurring? All right, want to move on to the capital improvement plan? We want to do that?
Please. So, just to recap, we did have conversations earlier, I thank the Board of Finance for discussing the financing strategies. If you recall, we did have a lengthy discussion about what our financing capacity is and what that debt limit would look like to fund a certain project. Board of Selectmen did review our programs in a capital plan last night. We also had a presentation on the Board of Ed programs and projects, and we did forward those to you as a result of last night's meeting. We also forwarded the capital projects to the Planning Commission as is required under the Connecticut General Statutes 8-24, so they'll also be reviewing the projects. We don't have the report back yet from the Planning Commission. If you, at this point, I want to introduce Jeff Shea. Jeff is our new town engineer. He's the new Rich Sawitsky. And Jeff's done a great job jumping in. And maybe what I'll do at this point is have Jeff walk you through what the town projects include, and then we can walk through the Board of Ed projects.
Fantastic.
Answers your question.
So Jeff, how long you been on the job?
Just about 2 months,
There we go.
so it's quite a learning experience, to say the least.
So we got to go gentle on Jeff, all right, tonight?
I would appreciate that.
Good first name, though.
Yeah.
Cookies are good, yeah.
I haven't tried them yet. I'm licking my chin.
Yeah, you did a great job. Clip that off.
Capital projects.
Where is just sitting there? Cookies just sitting there. What
She'll
willpower.
yield, she'll yield. In the office, I would have had 3 bags.
I know, me too. They're delicious.
Mm.
Yeah, those cookies are great.
It's at the Walkway Road. Can we just go through it? It's at the Walkway Road. Yeah, it's very much. Yeah, it's very good.
It's a great unit.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll talk about it again.
Well, good evening. I'm going to run through briefly the first year of the capital projects. I'd be glad to go beyond that if you guys need more information on any of the projects, or I'll just continue into the 5th year, whatever your pleasure is tonight.
First year is fine, we might ask an occasional question on how it extends out, but if you just go through the first year, because that's technically what we have to approve.
Okay. So the first project is
Ethel Walker.
Go. There it is.
Okay, so the first project is the Ethel Walker Open Space Acquisition Project. This is a project for the acquisition of 41-plus acres of open space. That is a continuation of prior open space acquisitions with adjacent parcels. The budget for the acquisition is $1.15 million, of which $500,000 is funded through an open space grant the town has received. We're anticipating this, the closing on this will occur sometime within the fiscal year coming up, if not sooner.
And I'm sorry, Jeff, I couldn't hear, you said the 500,000 has been received?
It has. It's an open space, state DEP open space grant that the town has received.
When did we receive that in this fiscal year? Or is it,
Normally, I believe the check comes at some point in the process towards the closing, yes. So I don't believe we're sure exactly when the closing's going to be, if it's going to occur this year.
yeah, so we have to approve, they're not going to give us the money unless we buy the thing, right? So, but it's already in the queue. It's funded too, the state's funded it?
Yes.
Because the state awards a lot of things, but they don't always fund them. So they fund, this is, okay.
So that,
It's not an application, it's
Yeah, I believe there's a grant agreement in place.
So in reality, the $1,150,000, it's only costing us $650,000.
correct.
That's right.
However, bond council does recommend sending it to referendum for the authorization for the full amount.
Can I ask you another question that's kind of relevant? The Farrell's farmland. Now, we're going to be selling that. I assume that's happening?
We've approved the sale, and we're waiting closing.
And how much will we make on that?
The town received $480,000.
Okay. So there's a way to pay for this.
Roads.
Without,
But I should warn you that the Board of Selectmen, there's been some discussion of some other operating, some other use of that fund, putting some of that money into an open space fund to pay for some of the maintenance of some of the open space. What we found is 30% of our town land, 30% of all land in Simsbury is open space. We haven't added any staffing to maintain all the new land that we're bringing on. So Jerry's put together a plan for maintenance, and there frankly it hasn't been funded because we haven't had the funding. So there has been discussion, and the board will, if the closing takes place, and when it takes place, we'll be accepting that money and then recommending some of it to be used for open space maintenance.
okay.
So perhaps mowing some of the trails that we've got that you can't walk through at the moment and things of that sort.
So the 1.15, we would go to referendum with, but
But we only need
we
650.
would not need to bond the entire amount.
Right. So 650 is what's in the bond. I believe you got a bond total down the bottom, and that's the net number is down there.
That's correct.
Oh, it takes the 500 off.
Yeah, I think it takes the 500 off. It's got it lower on, and it says a grant down the bottom. Okay.
Perfect.
It's a little small for some of us older people. We have to work through the fine print.
Mary, can I ask you a follow-up question? Is there a fund that you mentioned putting this Farrow's Farm money into a fund? Is that fund already in existence?
Yes, the fund was approved by the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance, it was never funded.
Oh, okay,
And
I see.
previous requests to transfer funds into that account were approved.
Okay,
But
great.
it was recommended by the Open Space Committee, it is in place, but it's not ever been funded.
We had,
Been in place, right?
we had a fund to buy open space, and we funded it, but then we used all the money in it, and then this large purchase here, the Ethel Walker land, just shocked everything, because it was such a big number that we had to use that money plus surplus money plus bond, so we've been using a lot of money to pay for this, so that's why we need to talk about it, because we've just digested a lot of land purchases.
In conversations I've had with Simsbury Land Trust as well, the town has an excellent relationship with Land Trust. And both the town and the Land Trust are wrestling with the same issues. We've come to the point
Stewardship.
where, 20 years ago, we were desperately trying to protect and preserve our farms. We've done that. The last piece of the purchase of Ethel Walker and the piece of Tangier Hill that Simsbury Land Trust is working on will basically complete all the priority pieces that the town had set out to acquire. So now that we've completed our open space acquisition, we really need to shift and focus on stewardship and open space management. And we have had a number of plans in place, but have never funded the maintenance plans that we need, and to make sure that none of our trails go to forests. So we're working closely with the Land Trust. They're wrestling with the same problems and same goals. So we're hoping that we can do something together so we can maintain all of our open space in town, whether it's Land Trust town and land, to make sure we protect it for generations.
I suggest when we do that you get a member from the Board of Finance on, so we understand what
Absolutely.
everyone's trying to do.
Absolutely.
And so from the financial standpoint, the sooner you get our buy-in, the easier it is to understand something.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, we're a little more difficult if we don't understand it. So,
Mary, are there other parcels of land that the town now owns that are being considered for sale in order to help fund some of these other needs that we have?
So the only remaining parcel that is still before the Board of Selectmen is the Dewey property. And we need to, now that the town has taken fee ownership of it, we purchased it with a light tenancy for the owner. And now that Mr. Dewey has passed, the town now has fee control of it. We've taken a look at options for the building, and we finally concluded that the building can't be restored. So we're trying to identify a way to remove the building and then look at what the long-term use of the property is. One of the considerations is maybe selling some of that land to help pay for the maintenance of other land. But there's been no decision made by the Board of Selectmen, but it is on our agenda.
I'm thrilled to hear that, as you know. I think that's a piece of property that's, really not an open space kind of piece of property. It's relatively small, and but it's in a residential area and could easily be sold for $1 million at least.
That's an option.
And if somebody built houses on it, since it is residential, it would produce about 90 grand a year in new tax revenue. So I'm glad to see you saying that.
It is bifurcated by the road, so there are parcel near the river and a parcel across the river, and we're exploring whether the town would be better served by maintaining the riverside portion, so we would have river access and maybe, splitting off the property. So we're looking at a lot of different recommendations.
all right, see, the first one wasn't bad.
Not so bad.
So far, so good.
Yeah,
Keep going.
thanks, Mary. appreciate it.
At this rate, we'll be done at 1.
Right. So the next project is multi-use trail connections at various locations in town and master plan updates. This is sort of a project that was in the capital project last year, but it was modified to incorporate some other needs that were identified at various trail connections to the main trail through town here. It includes funding in the first year for both design and for construction on various components or various trail sections, including the Terrafil connection, which is the major one, the Baker Loop, which is the property along the river north of the treatment plant, the Farmington River Trail between Town Forest and North Mountain Road, the Terrafil Master Plan update. Mary had spoke about a need to take another look at that. So we've included about $5,000 for that master plan update, and also the Simsbury Meadows Master Plan. Similarly, a fairly minor look at that master plan to see what, if in fact, has changed in terms of the needs or wants for that area. This project, again, we felt that everything in this project was somewhat consistent with the other. And again, we're asking for $212,000 in the first year, with more funding primarily for the construction of the Terrafil connection in the out years.
Now, there's a grant, you say, of 139. Is that coming this year, or will that come in the future?
That's not a guaranteed amount. That's what we anticipate we might get as a shared cost in the construction phase of the Terrafil connection. That's potentially could increase depending on the programs that are available. And we're looking at those programs.
So you're not sure who you're applying to?
Well, that was through the Trails grants, I believe the DEP Trails grants. That was what was anticipated, that the grant that would be potentially obtained from that source. It's kind of a moving target, that program. We're still working on an application that's there, but we're not sure whether it's going to go through or not at this point.
I noticed this project's on the list. It's got a star by it, so there's I guess, if it technically, what was it technically not on the plan, the capital plan last year, so it got approval?
Right, and we changed.
There's a charter.
We changed this recommendation to include
Yep.
the loops and the Terrafil.
Right, so, but your board approved it,
Yes,
the authority it had to do to put it on the list? That's all I have.
Yeah.
So I got approved by the 4-2 or whatever.
6-0.
6-0, okay, there we go.
It's the golf course improvements. Also knew that.
Okay, anybody have any questions or more? Move on.
Okay, next project, Simsbury Farm Golf Course improvements. This project is requesting $125,000 in the first year and additional funding over the next 5 years to do golf course improvements, with the priorities being fairways, driving range, and greens in the first year, with follow-up with dredging in pond number 3, extending cart paths, and potentially adding irrigation to portions or all of the golf course. The funding involves both construction, some moderate to minor engineering costs, and I might add that a lot of this work is going to be done with in-town forces. We apparently have the ability and the expertise to do this work, which should significantly reduce the overall cost to the project.
Are we paying town staff with 125?
No, there's no staff here. This is all material. Staff is paid through the operating budget, so this is done within the normal course of work. And we're very lucky that we have a great staff that knows how to do this in-house, because the numbers would be significantly higher.
But what we're really seeing here across multiple years is the continuing need to be adding, to the golf course improvements. And, quite frankly, the thought of switching from a special revenue fund to an enterprise fund, I think this sort of gives us some of the reasons why perhaps we can't really consider that.
It's a tough analysis is, as you know, and something you can have further discussion of, but you're right, it's a town asset, and
But there's going to be continuing need for these kinds of
and I don't think you can
improvements.
ask, we all benefit by having a golf
Yeah.
course in town, whether you use it or not. So there are certain costs that you have to maintain your asset.
Yeah.
And so this is one example. This is also one of the last components of the master plan that we did. And so we have already had the benefit of having that long-range plan, and we're just funding it based on the capacity and the capability of our staff to do it. We can't do all of the work in-house in one year. So what we've done is we've broken up the projects into how much we think we can accomplish in 1 year, and this is a reasonable amount of work that we can get done.
But it's on this list, so it's the first time on the capital list? That's what this means?
It's a star.
I believe that is the case.
The 125?
It was on, but I think it was changed.
So, because we changed it, we had a, yeah, gotcha.
But it has been on.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, the next project is bridge improvements, which is a program or a project to continue to maintain our bridge infrastructure in town. Several of the bridges have a need for bridge and deck improvements, painting, I guess major improvement, I guess, as opposed to replacement. So we've asked for some dollars to prepare plans and specifications and bonding costs in the first year to try to address those projects in the out years. They're not critical repairs, but they're repairs that need to be done. And as part of this program, we're also looking at local bridge program funding that could be obtained for these projects once we have a better handle on what we're talking about in terms of repairs, once we do the investigatory work and prepare the appropriate estimates for the projects. Some of them probably will not be funded under that program, though, because of the nature of the repairs, and again, not being replacement or structural deficiency, so to speak.
So if we're not going to do it until 2018, why do we need to study it before 2017?
Well, we need to get ahead of it. Again, there's a cycle on grants.
And the problem with the grants is that you have to actually show documented costs in order to apply for the grant. So we need the information
In order to
with
apply.
enough lead time so we can submit it as part of the application.
Yeah.
We can't really do it any other way. If we do it closer to the outlying years, we're going to miss the grant cycle.
The funding available through those programs too varies year to year, so some years you may have an opportunity and some maybe not. So maybe next year they don't allocate enough funding and these projects don't score high.
Well, eventually we have to do these projects. I mean, I think that's what I'm
right.
hearing. It's just a question of when. And we at least have to do our planning to know what we have to do and the extent. Hopefully someone else will help us pay for them. If not, the town has to pay for them.
Exactly, and
So-
we want enough lead time so that we can take advantage of a couple of grant cycles. So if we miss, if we don't score high enough, we just then 1 year we'll have another chance to do that. So you don't want to block this in.
Do we need to spend time on the next two here?
We already talked about next.
Why don't you, I'm speaking maybe hopefully for the rest of it, can we just jump on to the alternative energy one at this point?
Sounds good to me.
Anyone wants to? Yeah.
And we've talked about highways and technology.
Which we've already covered. Okay.
I agree. I'm impressed. No attention to technology.
So the alternative energy project sort of aggregates several project requests we had received from various departments, and we felt they fit together close enough to sort of combine into one project. First project is solar installation support and management on town-owned properties and buildings. What this expenditure would provide is basically an engineering overview of all our town facilities, identifying the facilities that have the most potential for solar PV installation or other alternative energy sources, going out to RFP, and entering into a power purchase agreement with an appropriate company once those sites were identified. The consultant would, again, identify the sites he would assist us with the RFP process and provide some vetting of the proposals.
How much do you think we could save by putting solar on our rooftops?
I don't have exact figures. It really depends on the available areas.
I happen to know somebody who's working on Avons, and they're talking about a 30% savings in their bill by
Yeah.
doing this.
Yeah, they, I believe, have participation of the Board of Education also.
Right.
We're not at that point yet. We're still talking to the board in terms of what opportunities there may be. But there certainly can be a significant saving. You're
So-
saving on both the retail price and on the distribution cost of the electricity.
So this project could lead to some savings in our operating budget by doing it without any additional cost?
That's correct. The power purchase agreement normally allows a private developer to put these systems on your facilities. You purchase the power at a reduced rate.
Right.
And you also fix your costs over the long term for electricity. It's usually a 20-year agreement. So there are, again, we can't quantify those costs right now, but there will be significant cost savings.
You know, it's a shame we didn't do this when we put the library up. That would have been the perfect project to put solar panels all over the top of that thing.
I'm not sure that's what they're targeting, the library. I think they're looking
To
for,
pay for the energy that they're using.
And that would be an opportunity we'd look at. The library might be one of
The panels,
the best candidates on
I
the
don't
town
think have to
side,
be on the
given the
building
configuration of the
the
roof.
electricity goes to
I understand,
necessarily.
but I mean, we had an opportunity, I mean, it was
No,
even.
that's what I'm saying.
It was even proposed to us, and we turned it down.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a formal proposal, we had a contractor came in and said, hey, you ought to put solar panels on top of that.
Yep. Coulda, shoulda, woulda.
The remaining projects in this, or sub-projects within the project, Eno Memorial presently has outmoded or inefficient control systems for the both heating and cooling system. This project would include approximately $41,000 to upgrade those controls, along with some minor control improvements in the library facility also. The third piece of it is the highway garage gas conversion project. We're in the process of bringing natural gas to the Public Works yard, which will significantly reduce our energy costs there. To accommodate that, we need to change out some heating units in the garage to be comparable or to work with the new fuels. They've reached their useful life, so it's an appropriate time to do that. So it should result in significant cost savings for energy. And the last one is some solar line controls, both at the town hall here and at the library, to just reduce solar gain on strategic windows within those facilities. And there's a value there of about $2,700, I believe. I take that back, $20,300. So that's about the summary on that project. The total value is about $103,000. And it's a one-time charge, no future year expenditures on this one.
Water pollution control is paid for by the users, right?
yeah, the next three are what, water pollution control?
Yeah, the first project is the Longview Pump Stations, SCADA controls and pump upgrades. This is a project to basically bring our controls and our monitoring alarm systems up to current standard. The project will also upgrade the pump to accommodate future flows. We're in the process of connecting the Public Works complex to this pump station, so additional flows will be managed by this station. Cost of the project's $65,000, and it's a one-time, one-year charge. Project was reviewed by the Water Pollution Control Authority, and they did recommend moving forward on it.
Yep. And then the next one is...
Next one is sewer main extensions. This is the typical funding allocation from the sewer use fund to provide for requests that we have received for extensions. There are several in the process, various points in the process, so we anticipate over the next year we would be advancing.
This is going to be
some of
funded by a special assessment?
It will.
On the people that get the benefit?
Correct.
Okay. So we're not going to bond or anything for this? It's
Right.
going to be assessed to the people there.
Right.
Somehow we all seem to make money on our assessments. In the past, it looks like that's why we have a surplus there in the assessment fund.
Right.
Okay.
Next project is inline grinder and screen replacement. On the headworks to the sewage treatment plant, there's some grinder pumps that require high maintenance costs, and they're somewhat inefficient. The proposal is to replace them with mechanical bar screen units and separate grinder pumps that are more easily maintained, should reduce operation and also disposal costs for material that's screened out of the influent to the station. There's also going to be a slight reduction in energy costs because of the downsizing of the motors for those facilities. Cost of that project is $260 over the next 2 years. A lot of the actual install work is going to be done by town staff with some minor contractual work for the electrical connections. So there's going to be significant savings by doing it in that way.
The water pollution control amounts are a separate item in the referendum, aren't they, if I recall?
Yes. Well, yeah, they still show, well, it's not in a referendum. Their operating budget's in the referendum, but the capital, we technically approve. But in this case, this capital is being paid for
Through the,
through the operating, so the voters are going to vote on the total budget, just like Simsbury Farms.
They still vote on the total budget,
Yeah.
even though we don't need to go out to bond.
If we had the bond and it was a larger amount, they would approve that.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah. Thanks.
Next project in the first year is the Simsbury Farms improvements to pool and rink project. Several items have been identified that need to be addressed.
But that's for next year, that's not for 15, that's 16?
I'm sorry, that's the second year, you're correct.
Yeah.
So I will stop there unless,
Yeah, we'll just do the 15 years,
I agree.
that's all right?
Yep.
Reasonable? Okay. Why don't you just do the 15, that would, I don't think, is there anything else here, Culture, Parks, and Rec?
Nope.
We go to Board of Ed, right, next?
Thanks, Jim.
with them, you guys.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jeff, I
Very good.
appreciate it. Anyone,
Thank you.
any questions? Thank you. All right, so now we have the Board of Ed, capital.
There is a slightly different, if you just flip ahead about, right here, about 10 or 15 pages, it's where there's actually a difference in the page styles. You're gonna want to get to the one that looks like this.
Yep, it's the first one, 150.
Start with, yes.
It's like a file server.
His packet starts, yeah, flip ahead about. Yep. Got it. You can follow along on these, it's about 15 pages far.
Yeah, I think we only had a couple of these. Really two good ones last time, from what we had discussed. I think was there only two new ones?
We thought it was open, but it wasn't yet. Okay, there it is.
Well, this list here has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 projects on it.
Right, but for this year, I think there are only a couple that are new.
I see one new one, 1 star. Maybe there's 2. Nope.
The main office project.
There's 2 new ones, 2 new ones, yep.
Is the squadron line moved up from what it is?
Why don't we let them go through the order and then we'll just ferret them all out. So you start off with the server, district network infrastructure.
Right, okay, so, in last year's plan, there was a $350,000, amount for FY 15-16. And what we've done is we've moved 150,000 of that forward. Okay. It was working just fine a second ago. Okay. And so the focus of our work here is based on Walker Systems, which is the consultant that we've been using for the last several years to look at what do we need for our network as a whole to improve it over the next several years. So they did a little bit of a what they called a high-level network review, sort of a blueprint for us. And they identified a couple areas. The highest need is for storage improvements, a storage area network, and that portion is the $150,000 project that we'd be looking to do in the first year, and that would provide us with a 13.5 terabyte backup system at the high school that would be replicated across our fiber network to Henry James, give us some redundancy there. So that's what this first year of funding would be for, and that's our highest priority need right now.
Okay. How does that, I'm trying to remember now, how does that relate to the cloud?
How does that relate to the prior district network infrastructure project for the virtualization?
Yeah.
Okay. So essentially, we had that was a project for client virtualization, meaning rather than having a series of buying new desktop PCs and laptops and such, that is a method of providing an upgrade to all of the users. There's also a type of virtualization that we are looking to do, and that's our server virtualization, two different things. And that actually would be something that we'd be looking to do in that second year, the FY 15-16 and 16-17. So that's the second part of the recommendation that Walker gave us.
Okay.
But that is separate from the ongoing district network infrastructure client project, which is in its second year.
How long does a server like this last? I mean, when will it need to be replaced again?
I believe it's in the seven-year range. I can get back to you on that.
That's fine. I guess my question is, just because I'm learning and I'm new, why is this not in the capital non-recurring, which is kind of a strange name because they do recur, like you need to replace trucks periodically, so it should be capital recurring. But
historically, we have not. There's not been technology purchases out of CNR for as long as I'm aware. Just it has been more. It's tended to be more physical improvements to buildings or equipment, and the technology budget within our operating would pay for some level of this type of equipment, but this is a larger scope, and there's been a practice under the CIP. It used to be sort of an every other year concept, and that was where we would ask for several $100,000 worth of funding every other year. This district network infrastructure project that came up several years ago kind of changed that because of the size of it, and then we did not request that sort of basic network maintenance funding. But that's the history, at least in the last decade, roughly.
So, Peter, just for my education, do we have a definition of what goes in non-recurring, even though it includes things like trucks that need to be replaced periodically?
Well, typically, Linda, it would be smaller items and those that have a useful life of typically
5 years
not
or
more
less.
than 5 years. Because, I mean, we're essentially writing, we're...
The bigger question is, can we bond this? Is it allowed to be bonded? Joe, is this allowed to be bonded? Even though it has a 7-year life?
Servers, yeah, 7 years is normal replacement. You can extend them to 10 to 12. At least I did in West Haven.
I mean, seeing a dollar amount might be something we might thinking about not putting it on the bond list, but just, if we're going to approve it, just pay for it out of reserves or something like that. Or put it somewhere else,
Yeah, I'm not questioning the need, just where it
Yeah.
fits. Yeah, okay, thank you.
And we've bonded previously, I know, for these types of programs.
Yep.
You've been comfortable in the past. Okay. Any other questions on that?
Nope.
All right. So we've got two related scopes of work for Henry James Memorial School on the first floor. And just in trying to keep with the sequence for just what's being funded this year, we had, as you may recall, we had a total project that was close to $10 million, and we essentially have broken out the portion of that, which we're calling Phase 1, Alternate A, that is the main office safety and security project, and that would relocate the current offices in the middle of the building so that when you enter the building and are buzzed in, there's absolutely no way of keeping someone from going left, right, or straight because there is no line of sight from the main office. So we had the architects that did that previous estimate for the total project give us a cost estimate, and that is where that number has come from. And then at the same time, I should mention that while that project would be reimbursable through state construction, Bureau of School Facilities, the portion known as Alternate B, which I'm going to just skip to, that includes maintenance, but improvements to what's there that would not be eligible for reimbursement. So that's one of the reasons that we broke that out. That would include removing the first floor carpeting. There's some asbestos abatement that has to be done as a part of that. And then it would include replacement of lockers and lighting and ceiling. So it would really make a big improvement to that
So it's like a
first floor.
light improvement to the school? It's like what we call light construction improvement? I know when you did the high school, you had new, heavy renovation, and then light renovation. This would be light renovation?
Right. I mean, the Henry James project, similar to Squadron Line, has been in the planning stages for 7 to 8 years plus. And I know that the original scopes, they talked about replacing lockers as a part of that, but when we did the estimate, the updated estimate to get to the just under 10 million a couple years ago, those weren't in the architect's details. So essentially, in some ways, we're just trying to restore some of that that intent that if we're going to renovate the building, if you've seen the condition of those lockers, they're extremely narrow, they're extremely beat up, and they just don't work. The mechanisms don't work very well. So this is something that is just basic maintenance.
So alternate A and alternate B are not alternates to each other, then?
Correct. Alternate's
alternates
probably not
to-
the right phrase in hindsight. It's a little bit confusing. It was an alternate to
These
doing
are
the whole project at one time, to break out the
subcomponents.
first
Okay.
phase. And so really, you could write in next to the 8.9, that is Phase 2, that's the rest of the original proposed project, but that's now been pushed out several more years, so we're not
The
focusing on that.
8.9 is
But a lot
net.
of this is to make it all fit into the 7% structure.
Yes. This has been the issue for the last several years, that there's just no way a project of that size could fit.
But these two pieces at a little over $1 million are basically the stuff that we need to do now.
Right.
And it allows us to
Makes
push
sense
the
to-
rest of the
right.
stuff out a couple of years, while still doing the Squadron Line piece of it this year.
Right.
You said that there was reimbursement.
Yes, you
On the first page.
see on the bottom there, there's 257,378 under the Henry James.
Yep.
That's so.
What's our rate these days, Bert? What do we
It's
get?
approximately
30,
33.
33%?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I believe that gets revised every year, and we'll have to, we'll have to find out once a project would actually be.
But it takes time to
Applied
get
for
this
what
through, so you won't actually
Yes,
do
thank you,
this for a
thank
couple
you,
of years?
Peter. So for the projects that go through that state process, we have to have design work done and an application submitted to the state. So the earliest that work could begin would be the summer of 2015. And that would be the same for the Squadron Line main office project, not to jump ahead, but just that they really are the same concept. They're both reimbursable. They're both main office movements that relate to security.
And do you have to wait until you have approval to start the
Yes,
construction
yes.
if you want the
You
state
have to
money?
have the authorization, the bonding is a key vote that has to
They changed the rules. We used to be able to just approve it and go, and now they want they put in for a project, now they won't accept them unless we approve them, the town first, because a lot of towns were just putting in placeholders.
Yep.
And then the state was saying, wait a minute, we're not really asking for all these, so you gotta make sure you're serious. So we have to commit, and then they'll commit.
Plus, Linda, the need to be scheduling the work during the summer vacations.
Right.
Right.
Right, and even the, even just that basic work regarding the lockers and the carpets, Steve Twitchell, our supervisor of buildings and grounds, has been working very diligently, getting quotes, talking with contractors, and he and Jeff and myself, we'll be talking further about just, how do you get these things done in a short summer season. So it is a real logistical challenge.
But so what you're saying is it wouldn't actually happen, the cost wouldn't be incurred until the summer of 2015?
That would be the case for sure.
Which is actually
for the-
fiscal
for
year
the-
16.
For the main office portion. Technically, you could move forward with some of the other maintenance work, but that's what we're trying to work through now is logistically, does that make sense to put some of those items first? They're all contiguous, they're all in the same first floor area, so that's something that we're still trying to
So we
review and
approve
make-
it now, but we don't bond it till he needs it.
Right.
I misunderstood your question, I'm sorry.
No, my
guess I
question
didn't.
was, the work wouldn't actually get
Work
done
wouldn't-
and the cost wouldn't be incurred until actually fiscal year 16.
For those state reimbursable ones, that's definitely the case. Jeff?
With the exception of design costs.
Right.
Correct, thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, I get
Yep.
that. No, I'm talking about the actual building, yeah.
But, I mean, this is a good example of one of many projects where we need to go to the voters, get approvals and so forth, and the timing of the actual doing the project and bonding and so forth may be
Down the
a year or
road.
2 out.
Yeah.
That's why Joe does we'll do a cash flow and show us when we actually need the bond, and that's how he fits it all in to our debt policy.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Hopefully it fits
I'm
in.
curious on the next two items because I just read in the paper that, the town of Farmington received, $1 million from the legislature for a turf field.
I didn't see
And-
that. I heard
Really?
that they were getting a field, but I did not see
And
that.
so I think it was approved, and so they're getting $1 million, I guess, in grant money. And I'm thinking, their industrial
From
and
whom?
commercial tax base,
Yeah.
their mill rate,
Right.
they've got a state-maintained infrastructure of Route 84, Route 9, et cetera, running right through the town. How is it they get $1 million? And now we're looking to bond, it looks like, between the tennis courts and the turf fields. Well, I mean,
Yeah,
currently
1.2.
over $500,000, and then we've got $500,000 out for 2018.
Do you know who bonded them for that, for a turf field?
I don't know. I couldn't believe it. I'm thinking $1 million the town fund gets for a
Well, what
turf
grant
field?
program do they go through? That's what you gotta.
Yeah, they couldn't afford a turf field.
Mm.
What is their mill rate, 26, 24?
Way below ours, I'll tell you that.
The bond commission approved it?
It's a special deal.
Oh, special deal for Farmington. So so you guys need now, I see the turf field needs maintenance.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about that. We had in last year's CIP, we had a single figure for $750,000, which we've split apart. Last year was the first year that I had put it on there because the expected lifespan of a turf field is about 10 years, and it was installed in 2005, so we wanted to get that on our radar. We had a representative come out from a firm that does this type of work, looked at the condition of our track and field. Dane Street is our new athletic director. He and I met with this gentleman from a firm known as the BSC Group. His office is in Glastonbury, and he was good enough to give us his opinions. And he felt that the immediate priority that should happen in this coming summer is to work on the track portion. The top layer essentially needs to be redone, and then the striping. He said that cycle is roughly every 6 to 7 years, and estimated that portion would cost about $150,000. What that does is it keeps you from having to repair the sub base and saves you from having to spend more. So that was his recommendation there. He also looked at the relation between the drainage of the turf and the track, made some observations, and said that in his experience, a lot of towns will sort of separate those two functions out. So then he looked at our turf field, which again we previously had in for the 15-16 year 2 of this plan, and so he said that for approximately $100,000, there was some issues that with decompaction of the turf and some areas of wear and some drainage. He felt that you could extend the need to totally replace the turf by 2 to 4 years. So in putting it out, I put $500,000 for replacement out 2 years from where we had originally put it. So I didn't say we'd get the 4 years. I was trying to be conservative. Maybe we'd get more. Conversation last night with the Board of Selectmen was, well, does it make more sense to perhaps replace it sooner? We would have to bring these folks back. I think Jeff and I would have to really hire them to do a little more work. We didn't formally hire these folks to give us this guidance, and then we could come back and do some of that cost benefit. But that's just to explain that was
But the $100,000 buys us some time.
buys us several more years minimum, possibly up to 4. So if you're looking at a roughly 10-year lifespan,
Let's say we don't do this. What would happen?
if we don't do any of it, or just the
Right, yeah.
track but not the turf.
You're going to spend $1.5
I think-
million on redoing the whole
I think
damn
you'd have to
thing.
do it sooner, and, I guess where we just want to make sure is that the decompaction in those areas aren't
So
giving us any safety issues, so I would have to get their sort of verification on that. Not trying to scare anybody, I'm just saying, he didn't say that absolutely had to be done this time, but I feel strongly that we need to have a plan and get it looked at, and
Seems $100,000 is reasonable for it can extend 4 years, when if you look at the $500,000,
What was it, $1.9 million we spent on doing the?
Yeah, I'm seeing 250 here, not
250
100.
total.
the 500 is in the 18.
Or 280.
Is the 17,
But they
18
got
for
the
turf
grade and
of replacement.
drainage,
Of the 250, 150 would be the approximate value, he said, of the track portion,
Track.
with about 100 being the turf and drainage.
And $500,000 is what Farmington got as a steep grant.
Was 500,000?
They have steep ramp, yeah. Well, steep ramps are nice.
Was it $1 million total, or just, it was what paid the whole project?
Are
No,
we
they
going to
got
kill this anymore, or can we
No.
move on?
Oh, Lord, okay.
Think we're all set? This one?
Yeah.
Let's go. Next one?
Close down the track.
Okay, the
Squadron House.
Squadron Line project was the most recent conversation that the Board of Ed had right before the recommendations were forwarded to the Board of Selectmen. And I guess to just paraphrase the conversation, I think it was that given that this was a similar project involving safety and security for the main office, and it had also been a project that had been contemplated for many years, they asked to move this to the same first year funding and asked us to get an updated quote. There had not been an update to a quote for, I believe, about seven years. We brought back the same architect, who just completed his first run at it last week. Jeff, Steve Twitchell, myself, and others still need to really dig into the cost estimate further, but we feel confident that it is a conservative estimate, and that's what you see before you here of $1,050,000. The reimbursements were not assumed in our previous version for either main office project. So in terms of the net, we're really looking at actually slightly less monies, so it fits within the 7% guideline that we had sent out previously.
So that 348,705 would be about the 33% that.
Exactly. Yeah, the same. We use the same assumption for all of the projects that you see.
Good. That's it for yours? Good. Any more questions? Any? Thank you.
Peter, just a request, kind of next steps with this, could we do the cash flow analysis? Because there might be more earlier, because we're making the 7% work with the projects rather than the cash flow. And the reality is it's when we go to bond that matters. So if we could look at cash flow, it might free up some more.
I think, Joe, we have an interest in understanding what we might need to do with some small capital items this year, and whether we could do them out of reserves and so forth, and take care of them that way. We sort of need to understand what the availability is.
We do have a model that was put together by PFM, it's basically what they presented last week. We can model whatever you want to see.
Well, we'll find someplace in Kevin's, Sean, if you found it.
I probably threw it away already.
He's got an Excel spreadsheet model, but I don't think Mary Ann ever really mastered that.
We have Kevin's old files, and we actually just talked to Kevin last week, so he's available to help us dig through and find that. But our goal is to put together that same cash flow analysis.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think there's a few pots, too, where we can pay for some of the smaller projects. We can either take them out if we have money left over this year, because if our revenues are up on reserves. We can also, when we finally set the capital budget, we have some money there, because with the expected bond payments, we're going down, so we have a couple $100,000 available there, and then we can actually pay cash. Like we did last year, we put $400,000 and we paid cash for this year. We could do something like that. So we have a lot of flexibility in how we can deal with it.
Can we talk about roads and all that conversation, too?
Oh, no.
No.
So I understand what we're going to the taxpayers with.
Well, what we're going to do is, right now, what we have to do is move on to public hearing without a formal approval. I mean, just move on to hearing. We have to move the operating budgets on, if we're happy moving those on, and the capital as presented, we can move that on, so they'll make the capital presentation.
Yeah.
Afterwards, we have to approve it and decide bond language or where we're going to pay for it.
Well, do we have a bottom line, though, yet, now that we have a final Board of Selectmen number, and, I mean, we still have some decisions to make about the 98.5
We
and
certainly
such, but
could do that
before we go
now.
to the public, I'd like to
But
know.
I think the point is that we want to hear from the public about, the proposals that I think we feel we should just move them on to the public at this point and get their input.
Well, we got to show them something, too. I
Yeah.
mean, why don't we do some modeling? You want to take a 5-minute break? If somebody wants to take a 5 minute, I want to die and eat my cookie. So,
You got 4 of them there if you're not going to eat them all.
I'm not going to eat them all, I'll just eat one. But if we take a 5-minute break, and then we'll go back and maybe we can start doing some modeling so we can see the budget as presented. We have now Board of Selectmen budget, Board of Ed budget. We've got the capital, we now have the indirect revenue with the grand list growth, so we can start looking at what the model looks like. But let's take a 5-minute break and then,
Before you break, just, we did find the statutory definition of capital non-recurring, so we'll like to distribute that.
Oh, thank you.
I'm good.
It is based in state statute. and that's what we use.
all right, so we'll just adjourn for 5 minutes and then reconvene.
Game's over anyway.
Oh, come on.
Game was over before it started, that game.
Yeah, what was the point differential?
Is this March
91-52.
Madness?
40-odd points.
91-52.
Is this March Madness you're talking about?
Yeah,
So
this
did-
is the
UConn.
Oh, girls' game.
Yeah, you don't.
91-52.
And I can guess it was our girls that won.
I assume.
Even I know that.
Yeah, they're terrific.
Good year. These are good.
Oh, I'd love a water.
Water would be great,
Water'd be
thanks.
great, thank
Not much. Just put a quick model up. I just want to get the collection rate reconfirmed. And then,
Can we make it a quick 5, because I want to get out of here.
Yep.
I got a flight tomorrow morning,
Oh, where are you going?
Florida.
Oh, nice. Vacation?
Bring my mother home.
Supposed to be get like 1 to 2 inches light dusting.
I hope not.
Yeah, they said before I left on the radio, 20% chance of snow.
Oh, okay, good.
Maximum 1 to 2 inches, but
I have to go get a root canal
sounds like we
tomorrow,
might
so-
get a total pass, so.
You might get a reprieve.
No, this is a they like my mouth so much they want to do it twice, and when they did 30 years ago, they want to do it again.
They're expecting 18 inches.
Yeah, in
Where are you
the
doing
Cape,
it?
they're gonna get hammered.
West Hartford Center there.
Are they really?
Docks there. Good guys. So they put an old metal post in, back in the 70s, so they don't like that stuff in your mouth anymore.
Oh, really?
These are good.
Pretty broad.
Yeah.
All are part of the planning, construction, reconstruction, or acquisition of any specific capital improvement,
We're not.
or acquisition of any specific item of equipment. That sounds pretty broad.
It's exceptionally broad.
Is he traveling a lot?
Is there a dollar cap on it, though? There's not?
Whatever the applicant. You have something that has a short life.
My oldest daughter is a junior, and the other one's in 8th grade.
So, no, they're younger, so.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, they're good. Mike's
Thank you.
very good.
Oh, thank them.
He does everything.
Very much.
Little did you know that waitering duties were part of the other duties as needed, as necessary.
What was I say,
And I saw he was just involved in some aviation press releases. Pretty comfortable seeing it.
Oh, yeah, he did a settlement for CLP.
There's a cap on how much you can accumulate in the fund, but that's pretty huge, too.
It just was amazing.
There's a man with a computer, you just seeded that.
Amazing. George is just,
Oh, yeah.
By the way, I'm just screwing around
what
with
a
this
wonderful
second,
man.
just to make him mad.
Yep, he's good.
You know, he knows. From us, Nora, but he's wonderful, so it's been. It's really good work. I'm just so happy to be back in public service.
okay, we're missing Nick, and then we'll
Morning, right?
get going.
So, do you have all the new numbers in?
I believe so, I believe everything foots to what you guys have.
So what if I put my 600 into the operating budget?
We're not
do
gonna
it
have that
sooner or
discussion.
later.
We're not gonna be out of here by 9 if we have that discussion.
No, I don't.
I have something written just in case you guys go past it. We won't.
Everyone ready to start again? Yes. Everyone's reconvened the Board of Finance meeting? All right, you got the mill rate projection sheet up there. Why don't you put in the Board of Selectmen budget as presented to us with was it 2.2%?
I knew you wanted to hear that.
Pardon?
We have the debt service is now, right, unless we add any payments for cash for things, we could put them in there.
No, it would only happen if you bond between now and June.
What's that?
If you were to bond, if you were to permanently, if you guys were to do a debt offering between now and June, that's the only thing that would really change that number. Otherwise.
We're not gonna, right. But I mean, if we wanted to pay cash for stuff, we call it debt retirement / capital purchases, then we could put some money in there.
Fair enough.
And pay some smaller projects. Because right now it's a decrease of 117, right?
Correct.
Well, if you get up to 7%, you can only bump it up about 100,000 above where it is now, so.
And the Board of Ed,
There's only about 200 plus hours available.
and the Board of Ed, that's the 1.05, that's the right number we got in there, right, Bert? Right there. Okay, and then,
Quick question
Yep.
about the 2.2 and the difference between that and the restated base based on,
No, you can't use that.
you gotta use your actual budget, they gotta approve I mean, for explanation purposes, you have a base,
okay.
restated base, but technically, we have to approve this number here. Because we gotta, yeah, that's what we gotta approve. Now, the non-public, that's correct, right, the .44?
Yeah.
Now, indirect revenue, that's changed from what we've seen before, right?
Correct.
That changed in this booklet you handed out.
Yeah.
That's higher?
Yes, it's higher. There was a transfer that, listen, guys, I'm just learning the landscape. There was a $100,000 transfer that was down below on a list that Mary Ann had put together last year. Populated it for this year, it added 100,000.
So this is the more accurate?
Correct.
Right, so that's good news, right?
Good.
Now, you still feel, on the tax relief programs, those are what we had last year, so that's what we're going to, right? So that's the way we budget. We don't know of any difference, I mean, that's why it's a decrease, because there's less.
And the 335's the same that I presented,
Yep.
probably in February, I believe.
Yep, so that's a good number.
Yep. that's
Now,
it.
the supplemental auto freeze, the 1.03,
Okay, so that's two parts. Supplemental auto,
Mhm.
which is every year, any vehicles that are added to the grand list get billed out in the January timeframe. This is your supplemental auto. You guys average right around 20.5 million. This is a median number, I believe. Or median, I apologize. There's not much variation. You guys are right around 19 to 21 every year. So, we
So
just took an average. And then the second part is the elderly. This is part of the grand list.
That's the piece that you pull out of the grand list and we tax it, we show the tax.
Yeah, it actually nets against itself.
So you show a
Concern.
grand list increase of .97? Is that what it shows? I can't,
Correct. 0.90.
.90.
But that's not what
No,
Mary said.
All right.
that takes into account the deduction for the elderly piece, and it's just
Oh.
recomputing it.
Here, let's go back.
Let's go through, make sure we
You got
understand that.
another million in there as a,
Keep in mind, I'm using round numbers, okay? This is a point in time. So on January 31st, 2012, you guys submit to the state your grand list. I'm sorry, 2013, I apologize, which is the 2012 grand list, I apologize. That number was this $2.2 million, it's 22390931222. Okay?
That went up.
As you went through your planning process, you guys updated, right? And this is the grand list as it stood at the end of April. So when Mary was talking about the year-on-year growth, she was talking January 31st, 2012 to 2013 to January 31st, 2014.
That's a different time period.
Yeah,
Okay.
and that's
I
the
got it.
69 basis point change, right?
correct.
We're gonna mill that, we're gonna assess the tax rate on this list, if we went, the bottom list, that's what we're gonna do.
Yeah.
So that's the accurate,
And you have, what do you have in there? I can't read the number there. Just up, the next one up, the adjustment,
Okay.
you have $1.5 million in there?
Yeah,
Okay.
so
Okay.
once you snap the grand list, there's a Board of Assessment, Board of Appeals, Board of Assessment Appeals changes that come through. Honestly, this 1.5 is not really grounded in fact, it's just kind of a thumb in the air guess. Your Board of Assessment Appeal changes as they stand today are right around 800,000. I talked to the assessor, he felt comfortable with the 1.5 million. So basically, there's another $700,000 worth of changes that you guys can incur between now and June and not really have any impact. And I'll be honest, you guys get more additions than deletions to your grand list. I've seen nothing but it go up every single month. You guys actually do a great job recording it in your financials, which is phenomenal. It's a definite relief for me.
Yeah, but the real point is, we're being conservative with that 1.5.
Yes, very.
So that would only increase our reserves if we don't use it. It's unlikely since we're already in April and.
Correct.
right. So we feel good about this number.
Yeah.
So now what does it look like? If we go back to the big screen, so what do we have now? 37 point what? 1.5.
With a collection rate of 98.5.
Now, that's what the collection rate, that's going to 98.5?
Correct.
That's what we talked about? So if we go to 98.5,
We could achieve a slight decrease in taxes.
and what's the decrease in percentage? That .3,
Percentage
0.38.
A third of a percent.
so about a third of a percent?
It doesn't really equate to a lot of money. The key thing is that it's down.
Right. Down's better than up.
I'm still bothered, though, that we're not thinking about moving any of that road money forward and we're going to borrow for it.
Okay.
Well, but think, consider what the
We got to bite that
borrowing
bullet sometime.
rates are, but we're not earning any money on our reserves. We're limited in what we can invest in, and we can borrow. What was our last borrowing? It was.
In principle, I don't believe we should be borrowing for roads,
Well,
not
I
every 2
understand
years.
principle, but I guess I'm just thinking about our taxpayers and how we best.
Well, I think that's why we get that
Best
long.
rate that anybody ever seen.
That's why that group will,
I think though, that's why we get that long-range committee where we work with the selectmen, work with the public works director, and try to work out a long-term plan, Barb. I think, I hear what you're saying, and I really hear what you're saying, but I
don't
think.
want to put the 2.2 and the 2.5 in next year. I mean, if you want
But
to
if
do
we-
another million, but 2.5, why?
I got no problem with the 2.5.
I do, because we just had this conversation, and we had it last year, and we're doing it again.
well, but we
So
don't
I'm
even
not
know that we're
confident.
bonding for it yet. I mean, we haven't sort of got that whole plan put together and when that would
We're
happen.
jumping ahead of ourselves here. Let's get Tom Roy to come back to us and give us the things that we talked about earlier.
Well, and there may be some opportunities where if I understand this part correctly, where, well, the numbers moved, but where you were very conservatively estimating
Oh, with the 1,500.
appeals in the next 2 months that are not likely to materialize, if that leaves extra cash around, is that something that in 2 months that we can
Can you
reassess
recalculate
and-
that number on the other page, just to see if you used a different number, what that brings forward?
What do you mean? If
Yeah,
I
use
change?
800.
Put in 800 or a
Just
million or
keep in mind,
something.
this doesn't swing the needle one way or the other.
Exactly,
Very
that's
It
clearly.
why I
doesn't swing, it's not
wanted you
changing
to show
much.
us.
I,
So $1 million is 1,000 times the mill rate, so
Yeah.
that's $37,000?
yeah, not even.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I
that's how
thought, I
it-
was
no, no, it's not.
misunderstanding how the number
but I
is
do-
Per
used.
1,000, so it's not.
It's not
That'd be
going to
very
be,
conservative.
Yeah.
But from our debt policy perspective, with the 2.5, we're staying under the 7%.
well, that's what I said up there on the
Yes.
second line. We could add in a little over $200,000 in spending there, the way Peter was suggesting, putting it in, calling it as part of our debt retirement budget, and still be in that 7% number if we're really concerned about the 7% number.
I think one thing we have to do is when we go to the public hearing, we have to present an estimated tax increase to the voters.
I agree.
So what I'd like to come out of here with is, we don't have to absolutely agree on the budgets tonight, but we have to say we're going to send forward the Board of Selectmen budget, Board of Ed budget, as is, capital non-recurring, all the other budgets, Simsbury Farms, the sewer fund, and then the capital as is, listen to the public hearing, and then decide what we're going to move forward for referendum.
And the key number in that right now is the 98.5.
Right, and are we going to, are we willing to go to a collection rate of 98.5?
Yes.
I mean, because I don't want to, that will be a drastic swing if all of a sudden we decide, gee, I want that number to be something different.
Well, put it back at 98 just quickly, if you would, Joe. I mean, that throws us into a slight increase.
Right.
And that's sort of the compromise that we've told both of the boards that we're willing to make,
Yeah.
along with some restraint from them to hold this thing at least flat or bring it down a little bit.
We're still growing our reserves at 8.5 because it's still
Yep.
a percent in change under the actual rate.
I haven't heard any of us speak against it, so I think.
Yeah.
we can move
So I just
forward.
want to be careful. I don't know that we're growing our reserves. We're giving us some flexibility in next year to be able to do some things that will come up unforeseen, which happens every year.
No, but our reserves are higher than what we had discussed in the past in terms of the 10%.
But we're not growing.
We're up,
Wouldn't be
we're up by
growing.
12.
But we're not
Well,
growing.
we will be growing than that
We could.
98.5 because our tax collection rate's 99.7.
Well, what will we have? I mean, if this year we're anticipating, what, $1.1 million excess from taxes? All right, so let's say we take a half a point out of that, that takes what, about 400 out? So that gives us about a $700,000 number. Now, let's say we have a year like this year. We're gonna be asked to probably transfer 500,000 to 600,000 out. So we'll still be able to do that. Now, we have authority up to 900,000, 1%.
Right.
But I, looking back historically, I guess if we did a 20-year study of what we've needed, we've had needs, we've had, budget needs over times. When you have the storm, we have a special provision where we can deal with the storm now in the charter. So I think we have enough flexibility, and
To pay some things with cash.
we're still going to probably build reserves so the bond rating agency should still be happy. If we see we have a problem, we're going to have to adjust it and go down, and then obviously that's a tax increase when you go down. So that's why you hate to, manage people's expectations. You don't want to think that they're always going to get a good number. Now, this is a one-time deal. Once we do it, we can't do it again. It's at 98.5, so next year, if we want to get to zero, we need a lot of work starting right now and all the budgets going forward. So we can't do it by changing a collection rate.
Right.
So, unless all of a sudden we collect 100%. But I don't think that's going to happen. So the one thing, though, is if we show debt retirement, we want to leave ourselves a little cushion. Maybe we don't show that down to maybe we show that number the same as the year before. Joe, if we show that 6.2.
Plug in zero.
I'm sorry, which?
Plug in zero. on
Put in
the second-
0% for debt retirement. So when I go before on the public hearing,
Right here, zero?
go to left, go left 2. Left.
See where it's 1.9?
Please don't populate that with.
Oh, you mean?
My one on that you sent me does.
Then copy last year's over to this year.
Yeah, there we go. So that still gives us a tax decrease, right? No, we're right. You got to get the 98.5 down there. You got to.
Oh, yeah.
End up breaking this.
There we go.
Yep.
So that's still a decrease, even if we went to the same number. So if we show the voters that, and then we decide to lower it, we can lower it. If we decide, we're not. I don't want to go there and say there's going to be this, and all of a sudden it changes and goes up.
Right.
I prefer to go the other way.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree.
So I don't think that's fair to the voters to have them go vote on something, and then, oh, by the way, we were still in an estimate. It went the wrong way.
That change that you made, is 6.89 still the right number?
We can go up to 7 if you want, but
Did that recalculate? That's
Yeah,
all
that
right.
recalculated. It was
yeah, it was
677.
677 something, 677, I think it was before.
677.
So put 117,000 in. Now, if we decide not to put money up there, the tax decrease will be larger.
Yeah, just go, we'll see what we would have. If it was
So that gives us some flexibility, so when we ultimately decide, gee, we want to pay cash for something, here's 117,000. We can pay cash for something and put it in this budget. And if we decide not to, we then, actually, they'll end up with a better solution than we showed them.
Good guess.
Also, if the selectmen's budget gets a favorable impact from the Board of Ed, their budget could go down, or something could change there. So.
So we went to 7%.
Yeah,
I did want to pass along formally that Matt Curtis indicated that the Board of Ed discussion resulted in decrease the Board of Selectmen amount by the 40,000, and there was no change to the Board of Education.
How did that happen? How did you absorb 40,000 from them and it didn't show up in you?
And that's because we set final rates for the healthcare. That's essentially where we're comfortable now being able to do that.
see, budgets are always like a moving target. They're never, every week there's a new story, so you get new knowns, so.
So we have a change to the Board of Selectmen number right there?
Well, you got
Well,
40,000.
No, you
I
just
don't
leave
think
it, leave it the same.
Just leave it the same, I don't think we can. Well,
Because that's what
because you
they,
have
that's what they
40,000
voted.
They can put toward roads, Barb.
Well, but if you come back, if you can take, you'll address this at your next Board of Selectmen meeting and presumably
Right.
lower your percentage request.
We'll have I'm not sure what the next meeting is, if it's prior to the public hearing, it may not be, but we'll get it.
I mean, not that 40,000 is going to significantly change our
Right.
bottom line, but it will change your percentage.
Right, so when we come time after the public hearing, then we can lower their budget if we so wish. And the capabilities are there now, thanks to the hard work of the Board of Ed, that we really appreciate it. And it makes the selectmen's budget even, goes down, so it gives us
Right.
more. So if it was 40 grand, what's that, about a tenth or half of,
Drop it to 2.1
Yeah.
from 2.2 or something like that.
I don't know what it is, just for modeling, what would it look like?
Take down this by what?
Just take it down.
By 40 grand.
We're starting to parse
Yeah.
this thing too
I-
much.
I'm not gonna go before the voters with it, I'll go before the 2.2, showing that's what they're presenting.
Right.
So, okay,
Unless we can get Burke to pick up a couple more police officers.
I mean, the Board of Selectmen may decide they don't want to
We got 35
change
of
too.
them.
I mean,
anyways,
we don't have to vote.
we're going with
You
this.
can do the roads.
Okay, now,
We get the roads.
as far as moving this on,
You're bad.
do we need to make formal motion to move on? We're not approving the budgets, but moving it on to the public hearing. Can I get a motion to move all the budgets as presented
So moved.
and the capital?
Second.
Okay, so the motion's all the budgets and capital and the
CNR.
Capital
CNR.
non-recurring and everything, yep.
the
Board of Ed,
Sewer.
Board of Selectmen, sewer,
special revenue.
special revenue fund.
What else? We gotta make sure we got a whole list here.
There's inside our folder, right?
I think the word all
There's
encapsulates it pretty well.
Oh, do we have to read these in?
No. No, but it will give you the items that need to be included in the motion.
Hang on, here's the, oops, I moved it over here, that's why. So we have the,
Yeah.
so the Board of Selectmen, the 18,751,363, right?
So, yeah. So I make a motion to approve the Board of Selectmen 2014-15 operating budget in the amount of,
Well, it's to move it on, to move it to the public
right, to
hearing.
move to the public hearing, I'm sorry,
Right.
in the amount of 18,751,363. With the following changes from the first selectmen's proposed budget as delineated on the,
But I gotta get who's doing these motions.
You don't have.
We're not doing a motion, yeah, we don't have to do
You're not doing
motions.
line items then.
No.
Yeah, you just have
Right.
to
It could be
say,
one motion
Right.
for the clerk.
okay.
If you would just make a motion to approve and just list the budgets.
Okay, so I'm going to make a motion to approve the Board of Selectmen's 2014-15 operating budget, the water pollution control operating budget, same years, residential rental properties, same years, Simsbury Farm Special Revenue Fund, again, 14-15 operating budget, capital non-recurring fund,
Which includes LoCIP.
which includes LoCIP, the new projects in the capital improvement plan,
in the Board of
and
Ed.
the
Board of
Board of
Education.
Education.
but his motion said he to approve, we're not
No,
approving.
no,
Not approving.
to move to the, to move to
Forward to the
the
public
public hearing.
Once the budget's done, we'll have to.
Did I make that change?
No.
I
I have a second?
Change after I was,
Clarification, just non-public schools, separate line item? Did you present that as part of your operating, as part of your budget, that needs to go to public hearing? So you would have to add that.
in the non-public schools,
Okay. And the debt service.
and the debt service.
You don't budget debt service as part of the capital, anyway, you don't, it doesn't get approved, capital fund.
Well, it goes all in the other, doesn't it?
No, we've never made we've never done an approval for debt service. Debt service is just a result of
Okay,
all the other
so,
budgets, right?
No,
I mean, that's what,
we can set it wherever we want.
no, we can set it wherever we want, but
We don't need a motion.
we don't need
Okay.
a motion.
I need a motion, so I remove that from my motion, the debt service. But you have everything else, I think, right?
A second?
Second, okay.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. To move it on, so we are going to public hearing on April 10th.
And with that timetable, we'll still do referendum on May 6th.
Yes. But we have to, after the public hearing, we now have to ultimately pass
Right.
each budget. On the capital, is there any capital projects have to go on a referendum? Which ones will go on to referendum?
Everything over 900,000.
900, so anything over 900 is the magic number.
It's the
So that will go on to
roads.
referendum. And then the other ones we approve.
Only two, I think, right?
And we can do that either on April 10th.
Yes. April.
Yeah,
And we have a meeting on the 16th, too?
at the Walker.
No, that was the second, wasn't that
That
the
was-
placeholder?
That's a
We were
placeholder.
gonna have two hearings?
If we can't do it April 10th, we'll have to set up a date to do it.
Yeah, that night,
On the 10th?
that night.
Yeah,
On the 10th or the 16th?
yeah. If we can do it the 10th, whatever we can do the 10th. If not, then we'll have to move it on. All right,
But the public hearing is the 10th.
public hearing's the 10th.
We have a Board of Finance meeting scheduled for April 29th, which would be a second public hearing, the way it's on the schedule now, I believe.
Right. But if we
We're
can,
probably not going to use.
which we're probably not going to use, if we can get everything done by the 10th.
Yeah.
All right? So we're not going to meet again to the 10th. Now, on the 10th, we all go to the public hearing. We listen to the public, we sit up front. If the public hearing's at the Amphitheater?
You're
It's
doing-
definitely the 10th
Amphitheater.
and not the 17th.
No, it's-
That's-
you're doing a
10.
presentation.
In the
right?
amphitheater,
Yes.
yeah.
Presentations will be short and concise, and
On the 29th at 6 o'clock, but I don't think we're going to
we
use.
might try a couple of new things just to show people where tax rates have been,
Songs, dances?
other than that, but
So Peter, the 17th is not going to happen?
I don't think so.
And we can't switch it from the 10th to the 17th?
You mean the 16th?
No, that was the whole, remember the discussion with the town clerk?
This is trying to
Not
not
doing
be
it
in
on
two
the
places
16th.
at the
I
same
know.
time.
The 16th was the date we had saved, right?
No, the 29th we have on the calendar.
Yeah, I have the
I mean,
29th.
originally,
Yeah.
right, so 16th.
Well, let's just get through the 10th. I think we'll get through the 10th fine. We can make a special
16th is
meeting
canceled.
anytime we want after that.
Okay.
Yeah.
As long as we approve it, the approval has to go and be submitted to the town clerk by what date? To get that May 6th referendum date?
10 days?
The 15th or whatever that.
Right, so we got 10 days to submit it, so we got 10 days from the public hearing to get it
meet.
approved and submit it in.
It's really by that Thursday, because that Friday is Good
Good Friday.
Friday.
Right.
Peter, did you catch that subtlety? We do technically have to cancel the 16th.
Okay.
It's a meeting.
When do we have to cancel it?
24 hours.
24 hours.
24 hours.
We don't have it on our calendar.
Well, you don't have it on your calendar, but it's an official meeting of this
Yeah.
group still, till it
Right.
gets canceled.
Well, we just have to make sure on the 10th, we're going to have a public hearing, then we're going to have a meeting to follow. And
Right
then,
after
if we
the
have to do some business and we decide, then
Public hearing starts at
I'm sure
7?
Joe and Sean will keep us on the straight and narrow on what we have to do and don't do. So we make sure we meet our timetables. All right? Does anyone want to discuss goals tonight, or are we all budget out?
I think, well, I move to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you.
Good
You don't
job.
want to do some goal setting?
Come on.
Joan,
You guys are no fun.
Joan, you're available on the 10th, right?
Have a good trip to Florida. You didn't stay for a few days or come turn around and come back?
Hey, Sean?
You guys are I find resistance on goal setting. Come on. I sense resistance.